recovery. We're actually going to have an
Father
emergency.
Carey's here.
Yes.
Father Carey's here. He's got it under control.
Go ahead, sir.
I'll call the regular meeting of the Newport Beach City Council for September 22nd to order. May we have the roll call, please?
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Okay, a closed session report from the City Attorney's Office.
The council met in closed session to discuss the matters that were set forth on the open session agenda. No reportable action was taken on except one matter. The matter is set forth in the group homes litigation matter. It is the City of Newport Beach versus Morningside Recovery. The City Council, in a 7-0 vote, authorized the filing of appeal in that matter.
Okay, thank you. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Council Member Rosansky, followed by the indication by Father Carey Bellou.
Please join me in the pledge to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. O God, source of life for every living thing, source of love for every human heart, maker of the seas and the dry land, and giver of every good gift. Tonight we ask your blessing upon our mayor and city council, our new city manager and his department heads and staffs. Give them the wisdom of your Holy Spirit to help them in their work, aid them in understanding the issues that come before them, and guide them in choosing what is just and what is best for the common good of our community. Help them to respect each and every human being they deal with, especially those who have no one else to turn to for help. Give them special patience and forbearance for those who are difficult to deal with. Grant them imagination to find new solutions to old problems. And finally, when the work is done, give them the satisfaction that they have worked hard, done their best, and have used their gifts to benefit others. May all that they do and say give you, their Creator, glory and honor, one God forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Father. Before we start in the presentations tonight, I'd like to officially welcome our new city manager, Mr. David Kiff, to the position. It looks a little strange seeing you there than Homer, but we know you're going to give us great things in the future. Have a lot of good council meetings, probably some more exciting than others, and looking forward to it, Dave. Thank you. Okay, our first presentation tonight is a presentation to recognize our film liaison, Joe Cleary. Joe, are you here this evening? There he is. You want to come forward? And Glenn, would you like to come forward too, please? Glenn Everroad, our Revenue Administrator. I have a brief proclamation I'd like to read. It's a proclamation of the City of Newport Beach. Whereas commercial film production is the 5th largest industry in California, annually generating $38 billion and employing 250,000 people. And in 1985, the California legislature created the California Film Commission to promote film production in the state. And in 1986, the City of Newport Beach created the first film liaison in Orange County to facilitate commercial film production. And the City of Newport Beach film liaison position was to exist for as long as it was successful, and the need and necessity to facilitate commercial film production was required by the City of Newport Beach. And Joseph Cleary was designated as the first Newport Beach film liaison in 1986. And each year since 1987, Joseph Cleary has facilitated more commercial film production requests than any other Orange County city. And in the past 23 years, Joseph Cleary has successfully processed more than 3,500 requests for commercial film production permits. Now, therefore, I, Edward Selich, Mayor of the City of Newport Beach, on behalf of the entire Newport Beach City Council, declare on this Tuesday, September 22nd, 2009, that the City of Newport Beach declares the Newport Beach Film Liaison a success and honors Joseph Gerard Michael Cleary is the City of Newport Beach Film Liaison, in witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Newport Beach to be affixed this 22nd day of September 2009.
Mayor
Glenn, I
Selleck
believe
and
you want to
council
make a few
members.
remarks?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. And I have to first apologize to Joe. I brought him here under false pretenses tonight. He's here for the adoption of the film ordinance that's before you this evening. And had I told Joe that he was going to be here to be recognized by the city council, I don't think that he's kind of shy. So I don't think we'd have had the same response for Joe. So thanks, Joe, for being here. And thanks so much for the 23 years. Just a quick background on how this came about. 3 city managers ago, 23 years ago, the then city manager suggested an idea that I had to facilitate film production and creation of the county's first film liaison position. Was not a bad idea, but to quote Mr. Wynn, he said, just go for it for as long as it lasts. So when it stops working, quit doing it. I think now after 23 years, it's appropriate that we do designate the film liaison successful program, and that Joe has facilitated nearly 3,500 film permits since 1987. And we're happy to say most of those without causing any incident before the city council. So, Joe, thanks very much for your help.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank everybody on the council, of course, and everybody that's in the audience tonight. It's been fun. It's been a really big experience, but we have a good product here at Newport Beach. It's a great, great studio, great locations. So every year it gets bigger and better, so I have no problem representing the city and trying to keep us all out of trouble, keeping myself out of trouble. But we've got a lot of national spots that are very represented on television right now, Chase Bank, Nickelodeon, a couple of TV shows. But we get the good and the bad. I mean, the bad sometimes, people come into town with the rodeo idea that they can run over us and just kind of do what they got to do. But that's very rare. But I've been very happy and very blessed with the police department and also the lifeguard department and the fire department. So I've got some great backing. So I want to thank everybody. And I didn't know this was going to happen, but I'm excited, I guess. And I want to look forward to another 23 happy years here, and hopefully we'll up it to another 35 or maybe even 4,500 more permits. So thank you very much for acknowledging me, I guess, and thank you very much for letting me have this great studio we have here in Newport Beach. Again, thank you, everybody.
If there's any benchmark to what Joe does, since I've been on the council, I've never received one complaint about commercial film production, and I know in a lot of cities that's a problem. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Notice to the public, the city provides a yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the council. Speakers must limit comments to 5 minutes on agenda items. The council has a discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn cell phones and pagers off or set them in the silent mode. Now is the time for city council announcements or matters which council members would like placed on a future agenda for discussion, action, or report.
Councilwoman Daigle.
I have none.
Councilwoman Gardner.
I was at the opening of the Friends of the Library bookstore. If there's anybody that doesn't know about this wonderful service we have, it's at the main library. I spent all of $12 and came out with a bag like this of books for my library. That was great. And then I was also up at Sage Hill and want to congratulate them on the opening of their new performance and fine art center. It's a beautiful building and a great addition to the community as well as to the school.
Thank you. Councilman Webb. Councilman Henn.
I have none.
Councilman Rosansky.
None, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry.
One of the perennially biggest problems in the port streets has always been speed and traffic. There's a lot of students who live there. There's short streets with quite a few intersections. So recently, the traffic engineer has been out to review the situation to see if we can improve upon how the streets are signed in order to increase safety. And based on his analysis and looking at the views and the obstructions to the views, We're going to be beginning a program next week to install some yield signs, 7 to be precise. These will be installed at Newport Hills Drive East at Port Ramsgate, Port Albans, Port Loxley, and Port Trinity Place, and on Newport Hills Drive West at Port Wheeler, Port Manley Place, and Port Charles Place. And I think these will go a long way towards improving the safety in the port streets, which is something that the residents there have been very concerned about for many, many years. Secondly, I think we were all very concerned when we saw that the Balboa Station Post Office on Main Street, the Balboa Island Station on Marine, and the Bay Station on Riverside were part of the station branch optimization optimization program of the Post Office to close those facilities. I was in contact with Congressman John Campbell's office this week, and I've been advised by Congressman Campbell that all 3 of those post offices are now off the list and hopefully will remain open because they are important community resources that all of us enjoy for their convenience and for their service to the community, which is all real good news. And then finally, I'd just like to congratulate the Chamber of Commerce for another successful Taste of Newport. If you were there, you know it was a great event, and it really highlighted and featured many of our great Newport Beach restaurants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything at this time, but I think our city manager would like to make a comment under this section of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things I wanted to let you know I'd be bringing back to you at the next meeting was a fairly extensive discussion of the city's fiscal situation given the economic downturn. And as you folks know, you adopt a budget at the end of June, and then we watch that routinely as the months go by, and we're now at the end of September. We're at the end of the first quarter. We have an additional data in, especially on sales tax and TOT and property tax, and it's worth bringing back to you because the numbers are down below where we'd like to be. So that will force the city team to bring some recommendations to you and have you act on that. So I just wanted to let you know that was coming at your next meeting, the October 13th meeting.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Madam Clerk?
Consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar, items 1 through 15, are considered by the council to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. The city council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the council votes on the motion unless members of the council, staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and/or removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Members of the public who wish to discuss a consent calendar item should come forward to the lectern upon invitation by the mayor and state their name and item number. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium.
Councilman Henn. Councilman Rosansky.
Extension on item number 1. Minutes, I was not at the last one.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Curry.
No items?
Councilman Daigle. Councilman Gardner.
10.
10. Councilman Webb.
None.
Does staff have anything they want to pull?
Mr. Mayor, we have, just for the city clerks and the council's awareness, item number 8 has a different agreement. That agreement is before you. It's for the Seaview Lutheran Affordable Housing Agreement. There are minor format changes and nothing substantive, and Sharon is up to speed on that if you had specific questions for her.
Okay. Any questions on that item? Okay. Anyone from the audience want to pull an item on the consent calendar?
Lori Morris, number 7.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I'll bring it back to council for motion.
Move the consent calendar with the exceptions of items 7 and 10, and noting Councilmember Rosansky's abstention on item 1.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay. Item number 7, the ordinance clarifying the city council term limit provisions of the charter of the city of Newport Beach.
Good evening, Lori Morris, West Newport. I didn't know this was going to be on the agenda because I didn't really look at it, but it is an item that I was going to talk about at public comments. You have on page 5, since the prohibition is expressly limited to election, then the council can appoint an experienced formal council member to an unfinished term of office. And then again, in the I guess the ordinance itself, B on the last page, effective completing a partial vacated term. That's one of the things I want to talk about. I know Councilman Webb is going to be retiring soon or termed out. I'm not sure which. And it's been the pattern over the years that council members, before they retire or before they're termed out, vacate the seat. Then that allows the council members to appoint instead of having an election. And that was something I always had a problem with because everybody was picked from planning department. They were pretty much gifted that seat, that vacated seat. And then when election time came up within a year or a year and a half, they ran as an incumbent, which I just think that's an unfair advantage because they've basically been appointed by the council and everybody knows kind of who it is that they want to have. But the public in general doesn't realize that when they see incumbent, that person was actually appointed by the council. So that was one of the items that I had hoped we could get clarified, maybe add to the ordinance, that if a seat is vacated ahead of time, instead of just terming out or retiring, that seat either stay vacant, or if an appointment is made, that person is not allowed to run as an incumbent in the next election, or stated on the when you go to vote on the voter registration that they are an incumbent, that they are actually an appointee. That way the public has a better idea of who they're voting for, if you understand what I'm getting. Okay, great. I don't know if that can be added tonight. I don't know if you all are voting on this tonight and it's a done deal, or if it can be added. I'd appreciate some understanding of how that works.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm
thank
sure there'll be some comments on that.
Well,
Anyone
actually-
else want to speak on this item? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close it.
Well, as a point of clarification, actually, I don't recall I was allowed to use incumbent. Maybe the city clerk could shed some light on that.
I'd like to comment on just the premise to start with. Having been the only city council member up here to almost complete 2 terms, I think that your facts are a little bit way off. Councilmember Proctor had a business change and totally left the county, and it was, I think, probably within a year and a half of him being elected. It didn't have anything to do with trying to set up something for the future. Gary Adams had a job change in which he moved to Annapolis, Maryland, if I remember correctly. We had the situation where Councilmember Bromberg, if I remember correctly, was appointed to a judge, something that you couldn't have known about in advance. It didn't have anything to do with us trying to do what you were inferring there. Now, with Councilmember Heffernan, that's another situation. It didn't have anything to do with trying to set up for somebody else being selected, more than he just decided, I think, that he didn't want to be a council member anymore. So I wasn't trying to pass on anything. So I think that the way our ordinance is set up today is I think, a good one. And I think that the clarifications the city attorney has recommended are an excellent a way for doing it.
Well, getting back,
I would just,
well,
Go ahead.
Oh,
just getting back to my issue.
okay, go ahead.
Are you aware of what the provisions are as far as ballot designations? Because my recollection is you had to put, if you wanted to put incumbent, you had to put appointed incumbent, that you couldn't put just incumbent.
That's what I recall.
it's state law.
Yeah.
That is correct.
So it's already that way, Lori.
Councilman Gardner?
But it does bring up, when we had our study session that Councilman Curry had initiated in terms of talking about several things, we glanced at a few things, but we didn't really discuss them. And one thing that was brought up was this whole issue of the appointments and how that does weight. It's an advantage, no question about it. And I also had a couple of issues that haven't been touched on. So aside from this particular clarification, I would still like us to revisit the whole issues of appointments and everything. I know we've talked about it before, but at some study session, so we can have, again, a thorough discussion of that. And also, something I have been thinking about is we have if you've ever seen, we have a circle of 500 feet of where we have to recuse ourselves because it would be a conflict of interest. But that's if you own property. And I'm also wondering if we shouldn't have the same thing for people who rent, because I can see many circumstances where someone on a commission would be impacted even as a renter. And so I just would like to have a bigger discussion of that. So it has nothing to do with this issue per se, but to address some of these issues, because we did have a lot of questions raised last time that we didn't have a chance to really discuss. And these are issues of critical importance to our residents.
Okay. Any other comments?
Move approval of the item.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, next item is item number 10, Newport Beach Civic Center Project, approval of amendment number 3 to professional services agreement with BOHLIN, CYWINSKI, Jackson for its selection services. Councilman Gardner?
And I just wanted, this ties in well with what our city manager mentioned, that we are hearing a lot about the impact of our revenues, that they are declining or not what we would like them to be. And we also have a bunch of numbers that are thrown around about our city hall, and I'm sure that residents are sort of concerned of like, well, we don't have the revenues, and so we're still going ahead with the city hall. So just wanted to get an idea of when we'll start to get firmer numbers, and where are we confident that we're not galloping so far down the path that we can't pull back if we feel it would be better to wait, and that sort of thing.
Yes, Councilmember Gardner, and the City Hall project, as you folks are aware, actually this gives me an opportunity to remind everyone that on September 30th, so a week from tomorrow night, the Design Committee will hold a public meeting here in the chambers about the latest iteration of the plan, since the design team has been working on that. So that's at 6:30 on September 30th. I encourage anyone interested to attend. But to get directly to your question, a couple of milestones will occur between now and the time when we would write a check for construction, and that is the certification of the EIR, which is intended to be at the end of November. Your second meeting in November is one milestone. At that point, you would approve also the schematic design. And then going forward, as we start to look at construction drawings and prepare to put the item out to bid, you have up until the time that the bids come back to decide whether or not you want to do that project, and that is roughly a year plus away. Now, we do have an opportunity, arguably, to move some dirt starting in January. So that's not to say you couldn't move dirt and leave a hole for a while. I don't think we'd want to do that, but those are the kind of opportunities you'll have to continue to revisit the city's finances in the context of the project.
Thank you very much. I move the action.
I had a question about that. We hired CW Driver, and it's my understanding as part of their scope is to identify the costs.
Yes.
And so there is cost data.
Yes.
And when will that be available to the public?
That will be before you at your second meeting in November, but let me assure you that CW Driver sits in with all the design team meetings and briefs the building committee as well on where we are with the estimate and then where we are with value engineering. That's the concept of looking at, say, a type of siding or a type of pavement treatment that the architect may propose, and CW Driver, having built these types of buildings, will say, no, why don't you use that instead? It's a lot cheaper. So that process is going on right now, but their cost estimate, their best cost estimate, will come to you at the second meeting in November.
Okay, I'm just thinking if there's a way to give some rough estimates to those components, understanding it'll be refined, but I mean the community doesn't know if this is 60, 80, 100 million. I mean, like, there's just no number.
Understood. Arguably, we could bring what we have to you earlier. I would defer to some guidance from the building committee on that. The other thing I'd want you to caution you and the council, the community about is these are just estimates. We don't know what the true costs are until we go out to bid and see what the bidding climate will be. As I think you've all heard me say, this is a great time right now to build a building like this and build a park like that. And that's the time when we see the bids, we'll see whether or not the estimates are true estimates. You're seeing evidence around the state of projects coming in from 20 to 30. I even heard of a freeway project coming in 50% below engineer estimates. So I need to kind of put it in that context, that there is an estimate and then there are the actual bids, and really the actual bids will drive cost.
Well, speaking as one member of the building committee, I think it would be dangerous to start throwing out numbers while we're in the middle of going through this value engineering process where we're constantly looking for places where dollars can be saved. And the numbers literally change from week to week as they find new areas here. So, and we're not that far away from actually coming up with something that we can announce. We're very close to that date.
I guess just to chime in, it probably would be helpful to be able to have a chance to look at that data sometime in advance of the certification date for the EIR. I mean, it would be nice to have at least a little bit of time, you know, ahead of that EIR certification meeting to wrap our minds around that.
Okay, that's a good idea. Okay, I think Councilman Curry, you seconded the... Okay. Someone did. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, next item is oral reports from City Council on committee activities. Councilwoman Daigle?
Yes, as a member of the Citizens Aviation Committee, one of the things that we've taken up in the past year, or the FAA has at John Wayne Airport, and that's RNAV, specifically Duke One, which is a navigation system that commercial flights are now utilizing as part of their operations. And with Duke One, there's a series of waypoints that the navigation locks into. And the effect should be that there's less drifting of the aircraft out of that line. Now, that's what we've been told, but we are a community that likes to monitor, and it's kind of part of our nature. And as part of that, our airport consultant, Tom Edwards, wanted me to let the citizens know what we know up to date at this point. And Richard Cox is our consultant on behalf of the city, and he is monitoring this constantly. And he has monitored departures on Friday from 16:30 until 1800, 7 eastbound departures, 5 flew the Duke One, and 2 did not. They were both American Airlines flights. And in summary, during the periods of 9, 16, 17, and 18, he monitored 43 eastbound departures. This is limited to departures. And of those eastbound departures, 30 flew the Duke One. So we're not getting 100% compliance. Now, on October 7th, the Airport Working Group, their longtime community activists in the community, will be having a meeting at 6:30 p.m. at the Central Library. So I invite everyone to attend. And the Airport Working Group has hired their a different consultant to monitor. So we have monitoring going on, and we will look to continue to inform the community as to how this is going. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Gardner?
It is hard to follow, and I'm sorry I tried to.
Just speaking of airplanes, I think a lot of phones lit up last week because a plane took off at 6 a.m. and just, particularly over Balboa Island, was thunderous. And checking with the city manager, that was an aberration. It was a plane that would have come under the normal noise restrictions, but there was a life safety issue.
It was a life flight, so it was transporting either organs or some individual. I don't know the exact details.
So we can assure people that that's not, we haven't suddenly changed things, and they're not going to be hearing that every morning at 6 a.m. The Coastal Bay Water Quality Committee had a presentation on the Poseidon desalination plant in Huntington Beach. It's proposed. And they will be recommending to the City Council that the city sign on to an interim agreement. The reason for this is not because we don't think that there are still some environmental concerns that need to be addressed, but if you sign on now, you're signing on for the water if it does get approved, and it seems silly not to give ourselves that opportunity, because that could be in the future a very important source if it does get approved. And secondly, at the Environmental Quality Affairs Committee last night, we discussed the idea of some sort of restrictions on leaf blowers. And some more research is going to be done, but that will probably be some sort of proposal will probably be coming to council in November.
Thank you. Councilman Webb? None? Councilman Henn?
Yes, 2 items. The Economic Development Committee met on September the 16th, and there was a presentation on our traffic light synchronization program, but also, apropos of tonight's award, a presentation on the film festival made by Greg Schwenk. And just a few facts and figures associated with that. We had 51,000 people attend the film festival this year. It's really one of the premier signature events for Newport Beach. There were 1,540 room nights booked associated with that event. 53,000 hours of volunteer time donated to make it fly well. And the organizers are hoping to expand to more venues next year. Next year's festival will be April 22nd to the 29th. So mark your calendars now. That's always a fun one. Secondly, I wanted to let people know that the July 4th committee, I guess that's what we call it, isn't it? Councilmember Rosansky and I are on it. It's a patriotic group, but the real issue is to consider how we manage the crowds on July the 4th, especially in West Newport. We've had a pretty consistent plan now for the last 4 or 5 years. That plan did result in improvements when it was first implemented, but I think there's a strong feeling amongst residents and others that we need to have another fresh look at that and see if we can do better this time around, or the next time around, and perhaps establish some longer-term goals associated with that. That meeting will be held on, the next meeting of the July 4th committee will be held on September the 28th from 3:30 to 5 p.m. I believe it's here in the council chambers. I think at the last minute that was changed from the fire conference room, so double check the venue. But it's September the 28th, 3:30 to 5. Thanks.
Councilman Rosansky.
None, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry.
I represent the coastal cities on the Orange County Parks Commission, and this 2 weeks ago I had the opportunity to go and look at the property that had been donated by the Irvine Company to Orange County, more than 20,000 acres of park and open space, mostly in northern Orange County. I had the opportunity to drive and hike through this area, and it's really a spectacular wilderness that will become part of the legacy of Orange County and maintain the open space that we need in this region for decades and generations to come. So it was very gratifying to be part of the committee and the commission to recommend that to the Board of Supervisors. It's also interesting to note that a lot of this property is protected by cameras that are motion-sensitive cameras. It's not uncommon for them to have pictures of a jogger coming by someplace at 5:30 in the morning and have a mountain lion in the very same spot at 5:40 in the morning because the photos are time-stamped. So it just shows you what a wilderness that we sometimes do live in right here in Orange County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Daly had another announcement.
Yes, I do. On Monday, September 28th at 5 p.m., there's going to be the dedication of the Mesa Birch Park, and that's a project that the Santa Ana Heights Project Advisory Committee has worked very hard on, and so I hope all the council and everyone can be in attendance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I have no committee reports this evening. So we'll go to the next section of our agenda, which is public hearings. The first one is the review of the Community Development Block Grant application. We have a brief staff report.
Before you tonight is the annual report for fiscal year 08-09, which ended June 30th. It reports that we spent all the money. There were no discrepancies in any of the performance. We met our goals, and we're looking forward to forwarding this to HUD after the end of the public hearing and any actions you recommend. We're now in the 5th and final year of our current 5-year plan and are starting to work on our new 5-year plan for the next cycle.
Thank you, Lee. Any questions? Councilwoman Gardner?
I noticed in Appendix A that there were no figures for 2009. I'm assuming that we just wait till the end of the year to gather them. We don't do estimates.
That's correct.
Okay.
Move the action.
Second.
Okay, anyone from the public want to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, please vote.
Motion carries.
Our next hearing is the appeal of the hearing officer's denial of use permits and reasonable accommodations for Yellowstone recovery. And I believe there's a request by the applicant to continue to November 24th. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Move to continue to November 24th.
Second.
Okay, does anyone from the public want to comment? Okay, seeing no one, please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, our third public hearing, it's an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of a use permit for a full-service, high-turnover eating and drinking establishment with beer and wine service and use permit for parking waiver, Chronic Tacos, for a property at 4525 West Coast Highway. The procedure for this evening is going to be that we'll have a brief staff report. Then we'll open the public hearing, allow the applicant, or appellant, I should say, to present his case. Then we'll bring it back to City Council for discussion, and then we'll open it for general public comment, and then the applicant would have an opportunity, or the appellant, I should say, an opportunity to rebut at that point in time. So we'll go ahead with the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. There has been some last-minute changes with this application, so I'll go ahead and give a brief history of the application as it came to Planning Commission.
Could you state your name for the full council, please?
I apologize. Russell Bunham, Assistant Planner in the Planning Department. Apologize. Like I was saying, there are some last-minute changes, so I'll go ahead and give a brief history on how the project started out with Planning Commission, moving forward to City Council, and where we're at today in front of the council, as you probably received some last-minute notices today. Chronic Tacos is a takeout service limited restaurant in Newport Beach on the Balboa Island. It's currently 660 square feet. They're proposing to change land use into a full-service, high-turnover eating and drinking establishment, which would be an expansion of 1,500 square feet. And as it went to the Planning Commission, it was proposed at 1,065 net public area square feet. That has changed as it comes to the City Council. They've redesigned it so that it's 840 square feet. As it went to the Planning Commission, they had applied for an ABC license for beer and wine, which included a Type 47 ABC license. As they brought that forward to City Council, that was included. However, we got word as staff today, and we presented that to you with a paper from the applicant that they are requesting that that's being removed on tonight's consideration in front of the council. A couple other operational changes that have come forward from Planning Commission to City Council. They've reduced the number of proposed big screen TVs from 15 to 2, and they've also removed the bar and bar stools. Since the Planning Commission hearing, or after the Planning Commission hearing, the Planning Commission actually mentioned at the hearing some of the issues that they were concerned about with the parking. The city has hired the services of Walker Parking Consultants to conduct a new parking study, which was done in August. Walker, an associate from Walker Parking Consultant, is here today if you have any questions about the study. But what is really on the table for tonight, consideration for the City Council, is the expansion of a takeout service limited eating and drinking establishment to a full service high turnover eating and drinking establishment, and the parking waiver of 18 parking spaces.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Gardner.
A question. Are the proposed hours of operation different? Have they always been from 7 to 12?
I believe that the current operation is only open until 10.
So they're also asking for an extension of evening hours?
That's correct. And to clarify that, the proposed eating and drinking establishment has two sections. One is the dining section and one is the takeout section. The dining section has been proposed to stay open until 10 p.m., and the takeout side has proposed to stay open until 12 p.m.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Okay, thank you, Russell. Okay, I open the hearing and invite the appellant to step forward.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Name's Daniel Anthony Biello. I'm the appellant. That's what you call it. Hello, council. I did bring an artist rendering of what we actually are looking to do next door. I removed the part of the application that asked for the beer and wine. There's just no need for it. There's a lot of backlash in the community. I got a lot of restaurants, and I don't need the trouble. You know, I really would rather not sell the beer and wine, but I still do need to move into this unit if it fits. You know, and that's what you guys are here to tell me if it fits or not. So I'd like to get into this parking study that we did. I did an extra one on my own that I can pass out to you guys too, so that would make a total of 3 studies. All 3 of these studies were done in the middle of summer. So I'm hoping that The Planning Commission had asked me to do a full year review, kind of hoping that the 6-month review might be sufficient, being that my sales go down 30 to 40% in the fall and winter season. So hopefully that's good enough for us, this 6-month review of the parking. I'd love for you guys to ask the parking surveyor some questions because I paid him a lot of money. And I let him do his homework, and I can try to answer those questions, but you probably get more answers from him. But I'm here. I thought there'd be a stand out here for what we're trying to show what we're doing there. I know it's been brought up that I got this too. There you go. I do have a couple folders here. I apologize. There's only 5 of them, so I would hope that maybe a couple of you guys can share them. My bad. This was my first city council meeting in this city. That's just a little background on me and my company and what we've done. I have 28 units operating right now. About 9 of them run on a beer and wine license, have no issues. I've had 2 full liquor licenses, one with some pretty major issues, and the other one not so many issues that I'm cleaning up right now in Costa Mesa, called Chronic Cantina. The drinking and the beer and wine was such a big issue. I don't want to do it there. I have other ideas of what I'd like to do there. This was the first store of a 28-unit franchise company that I founded, and I have some ideas on what I'd like to do to expand that company. So I really need the storage. I would do whatever you guys need me to do to clean up the parking lot, clean up the parking, restripe the lanes, clean up the back of the building. I got lists and lists. I'd love to get some questions from you guys, and we can get into what we got here.
Okay, Councilman Gardner?
The landlord is all right with this, I take it?
Yes, absolutely.
And you say this, all 3 parking studies were in the summer months?
Yes, all 3 studies were in the summer months. 2, you guys had called for me. The one I called myself just to see if I wanted to keep spending this money. I mean, I was pulling a study, which I told Russell was basically study suicide as far as I was concerned, doing it in the middle of summer. So I did the study myself, and it was phenomenal. So I went ahead and pulled the trigger and spent more money to have you guys do the study for me. And I was pretty confident between the 3 studies that it shows that there's plenty of parking. So if the parking's, not the issue, then we need to get into a public necessity.
Okay. I think that's interesting. I wasn't aware that they were done in the summer. As it does seem, I think we're all familiar with that shopping center. It does seem counterintuitive that there wouldn't be. But certainly we have experience with Walker. They did the studies in Coronamar and the other villages. So I don't know that I personally could quarrel with that, with the study based on what my intuition might tell me.
You're breaking my stuff already. There was a little confusion. I'm going to go with Russell. We've had a lot of changes, a lot of last-second changes and stuff, and I really don't need to be open till midnight. That was previously when I was going to run the 2 units and actually sell beer, and then the beer till 10. I'm fine closing at 10 o'clock. I don't have a problem with that. That would help with some of the security issues that have been brought up from the 10 to midnight in that shopping center. I'd much rather be closed. I don't want to deal with the issues that are brought into that center from the one bar that is there that everybody goes to in West Newport, the alley.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, does your parking consultant want to say something, or?
I actually did have a question of the parking consultant.
Well, let's bring him on up and.
In deference to Mr. Viello's money that he spent.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Mark Linsenmeyer with Walker Parking Consultants.
Okay, Councilman Henn.
Yeah, hi, Mark. We've done, we're in the process of doing 2 studies on parking on the Balboa Peninsula, and there's been others done too. And my recollection in those studies, you were using an 85% utilization factor for functional capacity in your analysis, and yet I see in this one you're using 90%. Why?
Typically, we use an 85% occupancy for on-street efficiencies. In most lots, depending on whether it's a hospital, an employee lot, or a public lot, we use either 90 or 95%. So almost on all of our studies, we use either 90 or 95 for off-street, or yes, for off-street lots. In this one, we were more conservative and chose 90, and certainly 95 would have been in play as far as I was concerned, but we chose 90.
So you really think 90% is conservative when it's a parking lot, it's an off-street parking lot?
Yes.
Okay. And then I noticed that you did exclude the 10 spaces in the drive-through as parking. That seemed intuitively appropriate. Glad to see
Yeah,
that.
I had a hard time wrapping my mind around that one. So it's not something we typically see as a parking area. We do see it as a queuing lane for fast food restaurants, but not for parking.
Okay, that's all.
Okay, I got a question. Stay up there. In your study, you talk about this concept of using the ULI shared use standards here. And one of the things that bothers me about it is that my idea of shared uses is you have uses that have different peak operating hours so that you're able to take advantage of a pool parking situation, if you will. But as I look at this shopping center, it has a preponderance of food serving uses that would seem to me to have their peak demands all at the same time. So I really have a hard time buying into the conclusions of your study.
Certainly, we did not conduct a shared parking analysis on this plaza. We use the ULI methodology to ascertain both the 90% ratio for parking and 85% occupancy ratio number, as well as some of the raw demand numbers. We didn't apply any shared parking methodology to that. So if a 1,000-space restaurant generates 20 spaces per 1,000, that could be lowered to 10 or 15 spaces using shared parking. We didn't do that in this case. We used I think it was for a fast food, 15 per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. So we didn't apply any shared parking analysis to this project.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Actually, I did have a question of Mr. Biello. I'm aware that that there was a revocation of a use permit. I think it was in Upland.
Yes, sir.
One of your locations, or at least one you were somehow affiliated with, and then that there have been problems in Costa Mesa with your location there. And so I'd appreciate your addressing those issues and explaining to us why that is not a representative experience of your company.
The Upland issue, that was a franchise. I am also the franchisor. Yes, I was a partner in that franchise. We have pending litigation with Upland right now and with the partners and with that whole scenario, so I'd much rather stay away from that. Upland was a big mistake. Like I said, I founded this company. I'm learning my lessons from Upland. I'm not too interested in this full bar atmosphere anymore. I'm much better at building these taco shops that make me plenty of money, make my company look better. It allows me to stay into the school systems and feed the PTAs and all that, and these cantinas are not what you're going to see me come asking for anymore. It's more of if I want to do a beer and wine or a liquor, I'm going to do it under a Chronic Tacos fashion that closes early and doesn't need $30,000 a month in bouncers. I'm done with that. I can't do it. It's just I can't sleep at night. It's not worth it. I've had a couple lawsuits thrown at me from bites there, and I'd like to just wash that from my record, because I will be coming back to the city council. I'm a restaurateur. This is what I do. It's what I'm good at. I have plenty of concepts, and there's plenty of empty restaurants here in Newport Beach that I'm looking at. My reputation's at stake, and I understand that. So I'm going to clean that up. I'm in Costa Mesa actively managing it right now. That will get cleaned up. There's a name change, a menu change, and everything going on there. You're going to see that happen as well. This is my name. This is my company. I do have partners, but I take full responsibility for the impression that cities have of us, and I don't want to lose that. There's plenty of opportunity here in Orange County, and I need to make sure I'm running my facilities properly. Newport, from day one, I've run, it's perfect. We never had a single issue in the city of Newport. We've created millions of dollars in revenue between the two restaurants I have in Newport Beach. I got one in Corona Del Mar, you guys might be familiar with. I got numbers up that I can tell you guys all about. I got millions of dollars in payroll over the last few years. I've done excellent for the economy that we're in hiring. I did 30% increases last year in my sales in the worst economy since the Great Depression. People love my product. I'm having a tough time giving it to them in that Newport store. I need to give them better service. I need the storage. I need the seating. I need the bathrooms. That's my main concern. The beer was the icing on the cake. That was the easy way to pay those bills. I will find another way to pay those bills. I don't need the beer to do that. So if it fits, It's your call. You know, if you think I can manage it, you think I can clean up that center, which I know I can, give me a shot at it. If I do good, then next time I'm up here and I'm asking for one of these empty restaurants that has a CUP, and I don't need, maybe you guys will look at me in a different, with a better respect. Like I said, I have a bunch of names that I've already trademarked on different restaurants that I'd like to pursue in this city. So.
Councilman Rosansky?
Yeah, just to pick up on a theme here, you're talking about cleaning up the center, and aside from the beer and wine, which I think was a non-starter there anyway because of the number, well, because of your other problems with your other couple of restaurants and the other liquor licenses in there. I frequent that center a lot. That's my district there. I go to the donut shop next door to your shop. I go to the Fuji Grill. I've been to the alley once, I think. Only once. Not a regular drinker there. Like,
get out of there before.
Not everybody in West Newport drinks there. But I have noticed that the appearance of your shop is not what I would hope it would be, and has probably contributed to the deteriorated look of that center. Now, I appreciate the fact, and I like the pretty pictures, and certainly I'd like to see that center upgraded. I think the Fuji Grill people did an excellent job of turning a laundromat into one of the finest restaurants I think we have in town, in a dilapidated-looking center. But I think that your operation there, despite all your intentions up to this point, has not been to that standard. And I see a lot of your trash in the parking lot there. It's always been a problem there. I see the deteriorated look of the front of your store. So up to this point, nothing has been done to prove, to me anyway, the things that you're talking about.
Okay,
so, and if I may just continue.
Yes, sir.
I like the idea that you're taking out the beer and wine. I do think there is a parking issue in that center. It may not be reflected in the study, but frequently there are trucks delivering there. They don't deliver to the back, they deliver to the front. There are parking situations. I go there Friday nights, Saturday nights, and it is difficult to find parking there, despite what these figures say. And so, but I would like to see the center cleaned up. But I'd like to see some effort, I think, on your part before I'm going to agree to any further parking waivers in that center. So,
sure.
For my money, unless you have a reason why that
I do.
Flagship store, the #1 store, has been operated in that manner.
I've opened. Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm done.
Sorry, sir. I'll lose track of the answers. So if I miss a couple answers, let me know. As far as the trash, it falls back on, I have 660 square feet. And per square foot, you won't find a single restaurant in all of Newport Beach that's busier than me. Not one. Okay, you can go anywhere. 21 Oceanfront, not one restaurant per square foot is busier than I am. That's a lot of trash leaving my restaurant. It's all to go. Because of the design, I can't even get out from behind the counter. You guys have seen my facility, and if you've been there, we are locked in. Okay, I have to go out my back door and go around the building because my line wraps around the corner. I can't get to the trash. This will solve that problem. Okay, I got trash cans in the next door unit. I got bathrooms with trash. I got a new dumpster in the front and the back. The trash will not be an issue. As far as the facade of the building and what it looks like in the front, it looks bad right now. Go look at the green room. They just left their trash everywhere. Their sign's still up. My restaurant, yes, it does have stickers all over the window, but if you look in what I just handed out to you guys, that was made 6 months ago. Look at the picture in there. My Chronic Tacos restaurant, there's no more than 4 or 5 stickers on that window. It's the summer crowd that absolutely annihilates me every year there. And every year I got to go back and start over again and clean it up and fix the plumbing problems and just, it's a start over for us. We're a very busy restaurant there, and I do need the square feet, or else some of those problems are going to be very hard to stop. I can't, like I said, I can't get to the trash. I will get to the trash. I'll do my best, but it's hard when you can't even get out from behind your counter. Another issue, the truck's dropping off there. I have my own drop-off. I use it. You will never see one of my vendors dropping off in the front. I have a spot in the back where they drop off. If you give me this facility, I'll have an even bigger spot to drop off. Okay, I'll make sure the liquor store drops off there. I'll make sure the donut store drops off there. We have excellent back of the building here. We have great dumpsters back there. I mean, there's plenty of room back there to get people dropping off in the back. I suggest fining any truck that's dropping off outside hours that you guys don't approve. As far as you not liking what the building looks like right now in the front, I've spent the last 2 years buried in Upland. Okay, I did everything I could to save that restaurant. I couldn't do it. I washed my hands and got the heck out of there. I'm back in Orange County. I just moved back to Newport Beach. My store doesn't look phenomenal right now, but I'm in there. I'm in there every day. You guys will see me there. I'll serve you your tacos. I'm fixing that store. I don't want to dive into scraping paint right now. I'm waiting to see if I'm getting the next door unit. I'm going to do it all at once. That store will look gorgeous. It'll look beautiful. It'll look like Fujiyama's. I'm very impressed with what they did. Okay, the brick outside, the menu outside the building, the lighting, it's beautiful. I would love the opportunity to show you guys I can do that on that corner of that center. I'm not going to be able to do it unless you guys approve it. I understand that. If it's not approved, I'll thank you for your time, and I'll move on. I'll find another spot, guys. I'll clean up my restaurant the best I can, and I'll stay there for the next 20 years. But I would really like the opportunity to move next door. I will lower my seating count as much as I have to. I'll lower it to 10 seats, 12 seats. I don't care. I need the storage. I need the bathrooms. Okay, I need the trash, compact dumpsters. Did I answer all your questions?
Well, you answered my question, or you answered questions that I had, but I don't think your answers were sufficient, quite honestly. I mean, I own a restaurant as well. Every morning, my employees are out, and I don't, we have a guy that comes and polices our parking lot just like you do. I've seen the guy drive through there in the morning at 6 in the morning with the vacuum truck, picking up trash. But all day long, I have my employees walk out of the restaurant and I don't care whether you have to go out the back of your door or the front of your door. I don't know exactly how your employees get in and out. But to me, that's a poor excuse to say, well, I don't have a counter that flips up, so I can't walk out the front door, and it's too much trouble to walk around the back door. So I quite honestly, I don't buy that. As far as the drop-off goes, I don't know whether you drop off in front or not. I don't know whose trucks are out there. And I don't know how you're going to plan on controlling what, the donut shop's going to do or any of the other businesses in there do, because they all have their own minds of how they conduct their businesses. And I know for a fact that truck drivers have their own mind on how they're going to deliver goods sometimes and at the hours that they're going to deliver them. And it's not always when I want them delivered at my restaurant, and I'm sure it's not always when you want them delivered at your restaurant. And regardless of whether your trucks are coming to the front or not, there are trucks in the parking lot that do affect the parking situation. And you're asking us for a parking waiver.
Absolutely.
As far as the condition of your building, to say you've been out in Upland, for the last 2 years, I think that's also a poor excuse because, if you do have a chain of 23 restaurants, that and you're looking to expand, that appearance is important. And I can't imagine that you devoted 100% of your time to one restaurant in Upland. And if that's the case, then I worry once you're done here in Newport Beach and move on to your next 23 restaurants, what will happen to the situation here? Who's going to be watching the store? So I guess for my money, what I would suggest, and I'm not, as I said, I'm not opposed to good operators coming in and opening up in that center and having some leeway as far as parking or operating, but actions speak louder than words. They always do. And so far to this date, the actions that have gone on in your establishment there have not been up to snuff, quite honestly, and not to the point where I think this council or this city should look at further extending our goodwill to your operation to expand when you haven't proven that you can even operate to our standard in the small space that you have, and you're looking to double or triple your space. So that would be my response to your answers.
You're basing this on the stickers on my window?
I'm basing it on the entire operation. I've watched that business there since you've opened. I've lived in West Newport since 1986, and so I've seen it all come and go. And you do have a very successful business. I applaud you. You do very well there. And because of that, I think you have the resources to do those things. You have the money because you do generate the revenue to keep that place in a condition that it should be kept in. You do have the revenue to have an employee go out periodically and pick up after your customers.
And we do.
And exactly. So, and to not have done that when you do have the resources, not like you're saying, hey, I'm scraping by and I need to expand because I need to boost my operation. You have an excellent operation there, yet you have not done the things that a good neighbor would do. I've had complaints from other business owners in that center about your operation, that they don't feel that you're, up to par, and so I guess that would be my opinion.
I respect your opinion. I disagree with your opinion, but I do respect your opinion.
Well, you can disagree is all you want. I'm just letting you know where I come from.
Absolutely,
so
sir.
My advice to you, if you don't get approved tonight, and I don't know how this is going to go because I'm only one vote here, is that you go back and you do the things that you're saying you're going to do and come back to us in 6 months or a year, and then maybe we will consider.
Absolutely, Stephen.
Certainly I would consider.
Stephen, I've been picking up the trash myself.
Great.
I've been cleaning up the stickers. Like I said, if you look at the portfolio I just gave you, that was 6 months ago, and the front of the building was beautiful. There wasn't a single sticker there. Moving forward, I'd be more than happy to scrape that building every night. I got no problem with that. What I'm saying was, when you're serving 1,000 customers a day out of 660 square feet, it's going to be deteriorated a little bit, okay, just a little bit. We do go out and pick up the trash. Okay, I have 7, 8 employees working every summer day. One of them pretty much stands outside, but there's trash
Sir, you just told
everywhere.
me that you don't have, you can't do that. I mean, isn't that what you just said
What's
10
that?
minutes ago?
That we can't get over
You
the
were still
counter.
too busy to have someone go out in front. Now you're telling me you have a full-time employee that polices the trash?
No, I didn't say I had a full-time employee. I said we do go out and we pick up our trash. I apologize if we didn't get it all, but we do. Thank you.
Well, I guess I would just chime in to this extent that if it was just a little bit, I don't think we'd be having this conversation. If it was just a little bit of a problem, we could understand that. But I do support Councilmember Rosansky's point of view here that you probably deserve an opportunity to prove through your actions that you're an operator that deserves to expand in that location. So I'm glad to sign on to the idea of giving you a chance to prove it with your actions.
Isn't that, I understand that, and I don't know that I disagree, but if we say, well, come back in 6 months, how is he going to expand if the place has been leased meanwhile?
It'll be gone.
I mean, we are, tonight is the night where we either say, yes, you can expand, it seems to me, or no, you can't expand. But to say, oh, come back and show us, that's really rolling the dice as far as
It's do or die
availability.
tonight. I'm not going to come back and ask for a third time. I won't. You know, I've ran an unbelievable business there. I took a unit that for the previous 10 years has paid you guys pennies in revenue, tax revenue, and turned it into millions. I don't know how much of that you get, but I know that I've done $13 million since I moved in there. I don't know what portion of that you get. I've opened another restaurant in Corona Del Mar. That one's done millions since it's opened. I'm here to make money. I'm here to run successful businesses. Corona Del Mar is phenomenal. It's so clean. It's you could lick off the floor outside. Newport needs a little fixing. That's why I'm there. That's why I want to expand. I want the opportunity to do this. If you don't, I'm not going to expand the unit. I'm going to move on from it. Someone else will take it or not. You know, maybe it'll just sit there for another 20 years and make no revenue for you guys. I'd like to take it, turn it into something that can make some money for both of us. You know, if you don't want me to do it, then don't vote for me to do it. But I feel like I can do it. I've been opening restaurants for 8 years. I've been very successful outside of one restaurant that I've closed. One. Okay? And that was a big mistake. I'll never do a restaurant like that again. This is a taco shop, guys. I can run this with my eyes closed. I can do it. Give me the opportunity. What I was doing when I was in the Inland Empire was opening stores. I opened 6 of them when I was out there in 5 years. I'm back. I don't have any contracted stores to open at this point. None. I've finished them all. I'm going back to each unit that I started, and I'm cleaning them up. Watch me do it. And I'll come back in 6 months or a year, and I'll ask you for another location. I already have another location that I'm going to be taking in Newport Beach for Chronic Tacos. So I'm not done opening stores. I just thought it'd be nice to expand this one and clean up what I had there. That's all.
Okay, well, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, appellant? Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, we're going to bring this back to the council for discussion before we open it for further public comment. Councilman Henn?
Well, I think I
Your
pretty
district.
No, it's actually my district.
Oh, I'm
Actually,
sorry. I'm
it's,
sorry. Well,
Steve's
Councilman
district.
Rosansky, I apologize.
I think I made my
But
position
I don't
clear.
have anything more to say than what I've said. So.
Okay. Well, I'll chime in on it. I think the overriding issue to me on this property, and I appreciate all the comments that have been made, is just this parking waiver. It's a 20% waiver of the parking. We have, you know, if the Walker Parking Consultants is right, our zoning codes are completely out of whack if we can just take out, 20% of the parking spaces out of a parking facility. And those parking codes are designed for typical uses, and the uses that are in there now may not be the uses that are in there a few years from now. They may have different operating characteristics, different demands on the parking. So I think waiving additional parking in this facility is totally inappropriate. It's got a high preponderance of food uses. We know what happens when we have a lot of food uses in these shopping centers. And so before I even get to any of the other issues, I would not be in favor of this just on the parking waiver alone. Councilman Webb?
I, too, am concerned about the parking waiver. I look at it, it's really even more of a waiver than we look at, than is apparent, because as I count on the drawings, there's at least 23 of those spaces that are compact spaces as opposed to full-size spaces, and those are not as easily used by many of the vehicles that we commonly drive today. And I think it's a real mistake for us to waive a substantial number of parking spaces in this area. I admit that I have probably, most of the times I've been through there, I've been able to find a parking space, but there haven't been a whole lot of extra ones, and this is asking for a use that is going to further exacerbate the problem. So I really am concerned about the parking issue.
Okay, any other comments? Councilman Curry?
Well, I would just say, I came prepared sort of based on the alcohol request to deny this permit. And I applaud the applicant for taking appropriate action to recognize that as an issue and to address it and deal with it, and to make some other modifications for commissioning a parking study that at least makes the case that it's plausible that he could park for his facility. But I also share the concerns of my colleagues about the neighborhood impacts of this facility on the neighborhood, and it's too bad that sort of these changes could not have been made earlier so that the Planning Commission could have, reviewed those findings and perhaps conditioned it in a way that would mitigate the impacts on the neighborhood. I'd almost be in favor of sending it back to the Planning Commission for them to reconsider those, whether or not there are appropriate mitigations that could address those issues. But I think given the time frame that we're in, I'm not sure that that's a viable option where we are today.
Okay, Councilman Gardner.
Well, I notice there are, I'm sure, members of the public that wish to comment. And I just wondered, because this has changed so much. I mean, I think when I first looked at it, I went, well, no way. I mean, it's such an impact. But given the fact that it's downsized, that the bar aspect has been removed, that we've gone down from all those big screens to two, whether that changes in any way the feeling of the neighborhood of its impact, or whether there's still a feeling in general that this just is one too many restaurants. So I would be interested to see if there were any change of feelings because of this change of approach.
Okay. Well, irrespective of all of that, we still have the issue of the parking waiver that's kind of the...
Well, there's also the philosophy that if you don't have any parking, more people will be on their bicycles, so... I know we don't want to set a precedent as far as the city parking.
That's right. We got that bicycle.
Is that what you're telling people in Croydon, Omar?
However, one of the concerns that I have is that most of my email and mails that I've gotten, the people in favor live out of town, and the people against it are living in town, so that...
Well, that's why I thought that I would, if a few people from the public at least wanted to say whether this made any difference to them or whether they still are adamantly opposed, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Well, that's kind of the thing. I mean, whether it's Rose's Donuts or whatever, if you've got a good product, people figure out how to get there.
All right. Well, I was hoping for a show of consensus before public comment, but, well, okay. Anyway, I'll open it up for public comments. So anyone that wants to comment, please come forward. State your name for the record, please. Now you have 3 minutes. And
3 minutes is fine. Good evening, Council. I'm Jim Nahez. I live at 4431 West Coast Highway, and I am the president of the Newport Marina Villas, which is directly adjacent to that whole shopping center. We've had a lot of problems with various people in the shopping center, and by and large it's getting much, much better than it is. And your comment, and I kind of applaud him for pulling the liquor out of the chronic taco thing, and the big screen televisions, knocking that down. We do have 3 reputable restaurants in there that have beer and wine license, 1 bar, and 2 liquor stores. Trash is always a problem. Being right in behind the shopping center, we get a lot of beer cans through our community. We get a lot of trash coming over the wall for various things, and by and large, I try to take care of it and talk to the proprietors of the various places, and we kind of get things done that way. It's kind of a community thing. We talk to each other. What I am concerned about is the delivery trucks that are on River Avenue. Our entrance is on River Avenue. The delivery trucks there's people parking in the corner there that make it impossible to get down river. When the big trucks come in and park and unload, it blocks off our entrance. There's a red no parking thing there Truck drivers just don't even pay attention to that. They just pull in there, park, and it's difficult to get around. So that's one issue that I'd like to raise tonight, not on behalf of this gentleman here, but just talking about the shopping center. The trash there are two dumpster dumpsters outside of our entrance to our community that I'd have to ask somebody in council here about that, but I thought the trash containers had to be enclosed. These two trash containers are open to the public. Everybody that comes into our complex has to look at those. I applaud whatever the council did to make the bike shop clean up their act there, because that was a real eyesore. And I like Tony, but he had a big business there. Anyway, the trash is the issue there. The other thing that I've noticed in the past, Chronic Tacos has two delivery trucks that they pull in behind the complex there, and they take up most of the parking in the back there. So I'm kind of, okay.
Go ahead, you have 2 more minutes. I misspoke. You have 5 minutes. I apologize.
No, I'm pretty much done. I just, the trash issue is very big. The back of the complex, that whole structure back there, and the parking of the big trucks and whatever, all those are, the people in my community right there in Newport, Marina Villas, we care about that, and we talk about it frequently. We don't know what action to take, other than calling the health. Never mind, I won't do that.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Councilman.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify, the speaking limit's 5 minutes, but don't feel compelled to use it all.
Thank you, Council. Drew Weatherholt, 16-year resident here in Newport Beach. Thank you, Councilman Hinn and Rosansky, for your comments. I do feel you're very well in tune with what's taking place at this center. I applaud the fact that the applicant is denying or is removing his alcohol ABC license request. As I'm sure you're aware, districts 15 and 16 are very grossly overconcentrated with ABC licenses and the problems that cause. I still would encourage you to deny this because we simply just don't have enough parking here. I mean, the peninsula is severely impacted with parking issues. It's a big problem, and I think you've personally experienced that to a degree. We have high uses here with 5 restaurants within the shopping center, as well as a Circle K, the liquor store, and so on and so forth. I'd also, within the parking study, I did glance at the parking study. You're looking at, I did not notice any discussions with the current businesses and operations that are in that shopping center. What do they think about this? My personal conversations with some of those operators, they were very displeased to hear the fact that this operator was going to expand because of the parking problems that they have there. Jack in the Box Corporate, the franchisee, has the parking study addressed any of that? Have they talked to Jack in the Box? Have they talked to the alley? Have they talked to the pizza place? I saw no references to that. These tenants did voice concerns about parking issues at that particular property. If I was to develop this shopping center, there is no way the City Planning Commission would allow me to develop this square footage with these type of tenants with only 40% or 40% of the spaces being compact and a waiver for 40-plus parking spaces. I developed 250 square feet onto my residence. The planning department required that I had to have an additional parking space. There was no way I could get around it. That space had to go subterranean. That cost me $120 grand. We'd also like to see this operator not morph into another Newport Beach brewery where, okay, they're operating without alcohol, but they come back to you a couple of years down the road saying, I can't make this business work. I need to sell beer, wine, alcohol. We've seen that happen with Newport Beach Brewery. That is very well documented in the issues and the problems that developed within the Cannery Village. I also have concerns about the operator, and I think it's been pretty well addressed with the council that they've got problems in other communities. And those are not just mild problems, those are serious criminal activities, violence, including shootings and stabbings. I think it was best foot that I'd rather not trust the applicant to do what he's saying. I appreciate what he wants to do, but in the same aspect, I'd rather have him prove it before any type of variance is given. The applicant also seems to have an identity crisis. Statements made by Chronic Tacos at Planning Commission, wants to be a family restaurant. that allows people to get a beer with a taco, does not want to be a sports bar. However, acknowledges that he wants to have a beer bar in the center of the restaurant that serves pitchers of beers and have 15 flat screen TVs throughout the business. Planning Commission denies it. Then July 29, 2009, one of the owners, Randy Widener, goes on Channel 9 saying that he is appealing the decision with the Planning Commission to the City Council and no longer wants beer and wine, just wants to expand the restaurant and add bathrooms. Then on August 6, 2009, in the Daily Pilot, does a story on Chronic Tacos regarding the appeal to the City Council, and the article, Dan states that he wants to scale back plans and only serve bottles of beer with tacos and no longer wants a beer bar and limit the restaurant to 3 TVs. You know, the owners of Chronic Tacos just don't seem to be sure of what they want to be there. So, I mean, that is of a concern. Also, the operator appears to be in current violation of their current conditional use permit. It's my understanding that they are not to have any indoor seating. They have 6 bar stools there. It is also my understanding that they're not to have outdoor seating. There are 2 benches out front. It is also my understanding that they are not to have outside speakers. They have speakers outside. Obviously, we've already addressed the fact that the stickers and the graffiti, both on the exterior and interior of the restaurant, aren't exactly conducive to what you would call a fine restaurant. I do not trust Chronic Tacos to suddenly make these changes that he's discussing. I would actually like to see him prove it. I would like to see the improvement of that center, but the reality is we've got parking requirements that need to be met throughout the city. I do not wish to see this set a precedent for other retail centers, both on the peninsula as well as the city of Newport Beach, because we do have parking problems here in Newport Beach. Therefore, I would request you guys to deny this application based on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew.
Good evening, Mayor and honorable council members. My name is George Schroeder, and I've been a resident of Newport Beach for 20 years now. It really is only about the parking. You know, it's nice that he doesn't want to add one more beer and wine license to this area because we do have an over-concentration. At the July 29th board meeting of the West Newport Beach Association, this issue was brought up and discussed. And we all talked about the biggest issue is there is not sufficient parking in that lot now. You go in there in the evenings, you can't find a place to park. So a motion was made by our immediate past President Paul Watkins that the board not support the expansion based on the parking issues. So if you would like to know how the residents feel, Councilman Gardner, there's that parking lot is overly used now, and there are not places to park at night.
No, that's
Okay,
very
and
helpful, because I did want to know whether, I mean, what the issue was. If it's the issue is parking, then it is parking,
The
and
issue,
nothing
yeah.
he's done has
The
rectified that.
primary issue is parking. Okay,
Thank you.
Parking was waived by that property owner for the alley when they signed the lease. It was waived again for Fujiyama when they got their lease. So it's been waived down twice. So it's just impossible to park in there. I did read the 39 pages of the parking study by Walker, and you know, I do have a few issues with this parking study. On page 1, on the bottom of the page, and this study was done April 5th through April the 8th. It says seating is not provided. Well, you know, I have pictures here that I took a few months ago. There are 5 bar stools inside, okay, and there are 2 benches outside. So the operator does provide seating. When he got his conditional use permit in 2001, there was a stipulation that he signed, a separate stipulation in that conditional use permit that said because he will not provide a public bathroom for people to wash their hands before they eat, he is not supposed to have any seating at all. Okay, so all these years he's been operating with 5 seats inside. So this is a person who doesn't abide by the stipulations and the conditions of the use permit that he signs. Also, on the parking study here, anyways, Councilman Webb said there's 23 compact parking spaces the parking study says there's 24. Okay, and then if you turn to Appendix C at the parking study, there's actually a diagram of the parking lot, and I'd like to pass these out. And this is a diagram that the parking engineer provided in his report. Okay, I count the compact parking spaces, and I count 51 compact parking spaces, not 24. Okay?
I was just looking at the drawing.
Yeah, so this is a parking expert who's paid to count parking. Okay, and then he provides a report that says there's 24 compact parking spaces, and there's actually 51. So, how good is this report? Okay, and then also in the report, he does refer to improperly parked cars. Okay, he says you have to allow some open space for improperly parked cars. Well, because, and he also states that a compact parking space is 7.5 inches. I have pictures here that I took about the same time that this parking study was done. And these are pictures in the parking lot. And these are pictures of some of the compact parking spaces. And, I don't think these cars are improperly parked. Some of the spaces are only 7 feet wide. I actually measured 2 of them, and I will go on the record now and say I know for a fact there are at least 2 spaces that are only 7 feet wide. Okay, I don't even think that meets the requirement of a compact space. Okay, so what you have is the improperly parked cars. I mean, if a car is 6.5 feet wide, the standard car, if you park in a space that's only 7 feet with 1 line, not 2, that you have room to open the door, how can you even open the door and get out? Okay, if you could get your car in, you'd have to climb out through the sunroof. So what you have is people parking over a foot or 2 over the line next door. Okay, so when he states that there's 121 cars, okay, well, and that there's 20% open, that's not the case. Okay, and I also have included in that group of pictures there's a picture of a large Budweiser truck that's probably blocking 12 spaces, and this is at night. Okay, in his report, he says that the trucks do not come in the evening. That impacts when the parking is at its highest concentration. I have a picture of a Budweiser truck blocking about 12 cars in and out, and even on his parking diagrams here, he has a truck in the evening, which is at the high impact time. So this lot is over.
I think that my question has been answered, that it does not change anything as far as the residents are concerned. Unless someone wants to speak in contradiction of that, I really don't, my question has been answered.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening. Again, Lori Morris, West Newport. Congratulations, Dave. I do, just for the record, eat and drink at the alley, and I would ask you all, please go. It's very, very good. I think we can agree that Mr. Viello has a major criminal activity at his other bars and restaurants. And this isn't your first rodeo when it comes to a business wanting to shoehorn its way into an area that it can't easily absorb. You've heard from Drew that, there were problems in Upland, and I'll try to reiterate a little bit of that. And I'm here about that. I'm here about the crime aspect that this business attracts, and I believe that that's what you heard. And there is proof that Chronic Taco attracts a criminal behavior to their bar and restaurants in other cities. But more importantly, I am here to object and bring attention to the common sense argument that this center cannot take on more parking problems. It sounds like all of you have kind of driven by or been by there in the summertime. You've seen the chaos going on, and it is all the time. I'm sure the Walker parking is competent, but the parking stalls are by far the smallest I have ever encountered in my life. The mayor, you're correct. This is a shared parking all day and all night. These businesses try to work together with that parking, and it's difficult. I've personally watched a guy inch his way in and out of this, trying to get into a parking stall, and have to crawl out the back of his hatchback because he couldn't open either door to get out. So that's pretty amazing. And a lot of those stalls are just like that. The flow of traffic and congestion that it causes is just incredible. You have people leaving the drive-through line at Jack in the Box, people leaving the interior of the parking area. You have people leaving by Circle K, and they all converge at one point. It's a convergent point where they try to all get out onto Balboa Boulevard, and it's hazardous for bike people, for people walking, kids. It's dangerous, and that's a real concern. There's people all the time tailgating while eating, and they are trashing the lot, and it's from his restaurant, because that's where a lot of it's coming and going. They don't do it from the Circle K. They don't do it, obviously, from the alley. Fujiyama has outdoor seating, so that trash and that problem right now is coming from Chronic Taco. Now, he'll tell you that he doesn't want to expand as big as he previously requested, or he's going to cut out his beer and wine aspect, but the true facts are he cannot pay his higher rent selling tacos unless he can go as big as possible and sell beer and wine at some point. If he tells you otherwise, he's being disingenuous at best. His Costa Mesa Chronic Taco is a problem for that city, and it's costing them money they cannot afford at this point. I spoke to the agent, the previous tenant there at the Green Room, and they were forced out by that absentee owner of this area, this strip mall. And that was because he believed that he could get more money for the space. And I wonder where he got that idea in this economy. I think he already knew. I think he'd already been approached and edged the Green Room out. So that's just my opinion, but it's kind of odd. Now, I don't know how he can pay for the expansion and operate at a profit with such high rents without getting these parking waivers, and then without selling beer and wine. It is my opinion he can't, and he'll be back before this council within months crying that he can't make his rent, that you're impeding him making money. He's got to get that ABC license. He's got to have that parking waiver, and he's going to want that 2 a.m. closing time when he gets it. It's going to turn into the nightmare that we all can see coming down the road. Like I said, this is not your first rodeo with this kind of business trying to get its way in. And he's going to ask for all those concessions he previously, but all these previous times that he's come before you and said and changed, and just like tonight, big changes that everybody has to adapt to. But let's be smart on this one and be proactive instead of reactive to the problems that we see coming in our community. And this is a big impact for West Newport. Listen to the community members. This center cannot take any more parking congestion and the problems that go along with it, with selling, if not now, in the future, a beer and wine type of business. And just for the public's edification, I don't know how much room I have left, but his upland problems are significant, and they are on the police website, and I think Cindy Kohler did send something in to you. 2 attempted murders, 2 carjackings, 3 felony assaults, 14 other types of assaults, 1 firearm discharge, 4 auto thefts, 4 auto burglaries, 5 thefts, 3 DUIs, 5 public intoxications, 33 disturbances, 4 incidents of needed for outside public police services. The fire department tried to go in because they disabled their smoke alarms so they could have a smoke machine. And then when the fire department tried to clear the crowd, they became hostile. So I think we can see what's coming here, and I hope that everybody kind of takes that into account when they are considering his.
Okay. Well, as I say, I've asked the question. I've had it answered. As far as the residents are concerned, I think I understand how you feel, and unless you want to contradict what I've just heard from the last 3 people, I personally don't need to hear any more. I'm convinced that the residents have not changed their position because of any changes.
I don't think we have.
Okay, does anyone else feel compelled to talk? I see at least one.
Hi, Larry Mathena, 10-year Peninsula resident, and I want to echo the congratulations to Mr. Kiff. Putting that to the side, I just want to reiterate that as recent as June of this year, Costa Mesa was identifying its chronic cantina as a, quote, target problematic ABC licensed establishment. Second thing I want to point out, though, is kind of trying to be positive about this. I completely agree with the mayor's observations that if your operator did approach this thoughtfully and carefully, I sincerely believe they probably could have gotten a facility approved. But to begin with, you have a context where you have all this ugliness related to operational activity directly related to alcohol, and rather than sort of deal with it and admit the shortcomings of it, ran right in and said, Why wouldn't we go for this? We're wonderful. To me, it indicates a true lack of thoughtfulness before you folks consider whether or not you're going to extend any accommodation to this operator. Secondarily, and once you get past that point, you get to the issue of parking generally. And I think everybody who's been on the peninsula and has been past this facility or been in this facility knows parking there is hellish, regardless of the study and no matter how it might work out. And in fact, just a simple observation as somebody who has lived on the peninsula the past 10 years and has seen parking worsen and traffic problems worsen, I don't understand why you would almost ever grant more parking than your code calls for any use. Why? I would suggest you seriously consider actually going on record to say, in the absence of exceptional circumstances, you have no basis to allow more parking than your code calls for ever. All of us live with it every day. And in particular, at this particular location, it's one of the most troublesome. And I kind of go back to, there would have been a path for this gentleman, I think, to end up with a permit, but it would have been, no, I've got too much baggage to get an alcohol permit. And secondarily, I do recognize the problems at my location and figure out a utilization that would have reasonably used the parking that truly is available. None of that's happened. And you have a tough record in front of you. I see no basis, and I completely agree with Mr. Rosansky, you know, there's no reason to approve something on faith here. Quite the contrary. If anything, I do agree, but I don't know that the circumstance will allow it, that if this operator did do a good job, you quit seeing these sort of things in the paper and quit having these incidents going forward. But sure, you know, ultimately it's a good facility, but boy, it's already stressed resources.
Thank you.
I'll be brief. Mayor and council members, my name is Joe Reese. I'm a resident of Newport Beach. And a couple of weeks ago, myself and Drew Weatherholt asked for a meeting with Councilmember Henn and with the police chief, Lumen, and also with the planning director, Mr. Leppo. And our concerns were the overconcentration of alcohol establishments in the area around Chronic Taco, where it's at, and then also in Area 15, which is like 32nd Street to the pier and so forth. But please understand where the residents stand at this is we're pretty much at that point of being fed up with alcohol establishments coming to this area. And in the discussion that we had, we said, oh my gosh, does that mean that we never can have another alcohol establishment? I don't think you could ever say that. But we definitely need to look at each and every one that come there. And the reason why I say that is just looking at the statistics that are in the report, and it shocked me to find out that in Area 16, where Chronic Taco's at, there's 7 alcohol establishments. Per capita, that's a ratio of 377 residents per alcohol establishment in that area. RD 15, where I live, there's 98 active ABC licenses. That's a per capita ratio of 29 residents per alcohol establishment. That's scary to me. I mean, to have that many. You know what the county average is? 1 alcohol establishment for every 592 residents. That came from your report. And I ask you each and every time that this comes before you, any alcohol establishments in the future, please, please look at this. When you look at the police records with regards to the criminal activity that happens, we had 329 reported crimes in the Area 16. We had double that in Area 15. And again, the Newport average is 178. Alcohol does have a negative impact in our community. And where we live as residents, it really impacts us. We deal with it each and every day. And I just ask you, and I did ask Councilman Henn, to help us as residents to come up with a plan to deal with this in the future, to look at this issue that we have and this problem that we have with regards to the alcohol establishments in both Area 15 and 16. And I do thank you for the time that you took today to really listen, because it's obvious that you guys did your homework yourselves and not rely just on us to come here to really prepare for this decision on chronic taco, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Well, I actually give the appellant a chance to respond. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Council, Mayor, rather than kick a dead horse around here, it seems pretty obvious what the community is looking for. I don't agree with what's being said about me personally, about my background, about what I've done with my company. So because of the frustration, I'd rather not address some of the issues there. So thank you. I'd like to thank Russell for an excellent job. It was this city that I founded my company in, 8 years ago, and it's a multi-million-dollar company. Yes, I can afford to take that spot, ma'am, okay, without selling beer. Sorry to pass that on to you, but it's possible. I'm well off without doing this, guys, so I don't need the spot. It seems pretty obvious. The community doesn't want it, and I don't want to do that to the community. So if they don't want me to move there, I'm done with it. So thank you for your time. I'll do my homework a little more next time I come before the council.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, close public hearing. Bring it back for motion.
Can I make one comment before we do the motion?
Sure.
And that is, I think the question raised by the parking waiver is it too intense for this area? And I think even the operator is overwhelmed by the intensity of the current use. But there's another issue, and that is, why is the city tolerating the current conditions at the current business? And what I heard was kind of the veiled threat of, well, if I don't get this bigger space, then, I'm just going to keep it up. So what can the city, through planning or whatever, do to mitigate some of the existing impacts? Anything can be done?
We can review and monitor the compliance with the conditions of the existing use permit, and then take code enforcement action if they're not in compliance.
And what about the trash issue? What are our options with that?
Typically, a condition of approval on a use permit deals with maintaining the premises clear of trash, so that would be one of the things we look at.
I didn't necessarily understand from the first speaker that it was simply an issue of the chronic taco trash with the open dumpsters and everything. I wasn't sure whether that was just a center issue.
Some of it may be.
Okay. So that might be.
In fairness, it is a center issue. I mean, the donut shop there is also heavily trafficked. I mean, there's not just chronic taco trash in that center. Circle K, even there, people come and they leave their Circle K cups or their wrappers or cigarette butts when they empty their ashtray out on the pavement. So a number of there's been some improvement there. I've had code enforcement go out there and clean up, behind the center, but certainly within the parking area in front, there's a lot of room for improvement. And, I know some of the operators in the center have been trying to work with the owners and the management to encourage them as well as the other tenants to, kind of clean up their act there. And, I hope that they have continued success with that, because, that center, not to go on about this, but it is at the focal point. It's an entrance to West Newport. It's right there at two significant, it's a huge intersection. You have tens of thousands of cars go through there every day. And there's thousands of cars that frequent that center every day, going to establishments like Chronic Taco and all the other restaurants and operations in there. And it's puts a poor face on Newport having a center like that, right? When it could really be something nice. The other thing you might want to consider, too, which has kind of disturbed me, is that they have virtually no landscaping in that shopping center. And I'll bet they had it at some point. It's just kind of disappeared over time. And I don't know if there's any requirements as far as upkeep and maintenance of the landscaping, but there's no trees. The grass is virtually dead in there. Whatever they had is long gone. So, anything that we can do to help that. So, with that, I'll move the recommendation of staff here to deny the appeal and uphold and affirm the decision of the Planning Commission.
I'll second that and make one further comment. I hope the center owner is in the audience here tonight, because that individual ought to be getting a pretty clear message here that in order for him to get the highest lease occupancy and lease rates, that center needs to be cleaned up.
I have one comment related to compact parking. If this is correct, did all of the approvals allow 51 compact parking spaces in there? And if it didn't, shouldn't we be working towards having the parking lot striped the way it should appropriately be?
Now, my guess is there was some midnight striping in that center.
I'm pretty sure that we never allowed that large a percentage of compact spaces, particularly subcompact spaces at 7 feet. So how can we, can our code enforcement people check into that somewhere or another? Or?
They and/or planning, yes.
And we will report back to you on that.
We already have a code enforcement action going, and Russell and I were just talking about we're going to meet with code enforcement, go through the whole center with a fine-tooth comb and address all the issues you've raised.
Thank you.
Well, one additional comment on those compact parking spaces is we don't allow them currently, so if it was a new center, we wouldn't be able to put those in. And then the second point is, if they do get were to be restriped to standard spaces, you'd lose another 5 to 6 spaces out of there. Okay. I've been able to do it. And I don't have to crawl out the hatch.
He's going to take 2 of those 7-footers and.
Okay, was there a second to?
Yes, Councilman Henn.
Okay, please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Public comments. Public comments are invited on non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Okay, any public comments on items not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to our next item, which is the Planning Commission agenda and oral status report.
Mayor and members of council, there are 2 items on the Planning Commission agenda last Thursday night. One of them dealt with the Port Restaurant at 440 Heliotrope, and it was a request for an amendment of the use permit and an off-site parking agreement. The operator of the port wanted to extend their hours from midnight to 1. They wanted to be able to have lunch on weekdays. They currently don't have an approval for that under the use permit. They also wanted to add live entertainment and dancing. Obviously, because of the orientation that toward the neighborhood, there were concerns from the neighbors, and the Planning Commission voted to deny all those requests. The other one was for variance and for modifications to allow a new home to be constructed at 309 Lindo Avenue. Use permit was to exceed the height limit. There were modifications for projecting this front setback and variances to the maximum permissible floor area and the open space. The Planning Commission decided to put a cap on the number of square feet that would be permitted, but then did approve the application. So there will be a new house being built there.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, continued business is next. Revisions to the City Water Conservation Ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, George Murdoch, the Utilities Director, will make a brief staff report on this.
Well, good evening, Mayor and members of the council. What's before you is the final draft of the Water Conservation Ordinance that I brought to you about a month ago or so, and also the implementation plan on how we intend to enforce that ordinance. There's really 3 reasons. I'll make this brief. Really, there's only 3 real reasons why we decided to go through the ordinance. The existing ordinance was adopted in 1996 and then last updated in adopted initially in 1992 and then last updated in 1996. The existing ordinance has portions in there that develop the basis of what percentage to be cut back from data used in the 1990s. So obviously there was a need for an update. The second reason is there's a water shortage. I'm sure everybody knows that, and we've been hearing about it on the news. And that effective July 1st, 2009, the city had to reduce its water supply from our import sources by 15%. In addition to that, we're in our 3rd year now of lack of, or at least below average rainfall, and that our groundwater supplies we had to reduce by 7%, following a 5% from the previous year. So, they call it a drought, which is just the lack of rainfall, but there's, as you know, that the Delta issues are causing some issues with the Metropolitan Water District that prompted their board to adopt these allocations. So currently, we are reducing our water from our import supplies. The third reason is just a mechanism to ask or require, mandate, reductions in water use based on in some sort of infrastructure failure that we do have. We're vulnerable. We have a 7-mile pipeline that brings our groundwater into Newport Beach. Should we have a catastrophic failure of that pipeline, there will be a need to ask residents to reduce their supply until we can get this line repaired. There's also a risk, as you've heard in the news, of maybe a delta issue from an earthquake, a levee failure, and the loss of our imported supplies. So all of these reasons may mandate a water reduction, just if nothing else, so we can make the repairs to our infrastructure. We're very fortunate here in Newport that we do have the Big Canyon Reservoir. We store over 195 million gallons of water. And staff has spent the last few years developing backup generators and backup supplies. So we feel we can make it some length of time, but may need to ask the residents to reduce water to conserve should we have this infrastructure failure. What's in the ordinance now, the current ordinance that's before you, the proposed ordinance, is 17 permanent restrictions. And I did want to let you know that the last time I brought this to you, there were portions of that ordinance that needed to be implemented. One is the funding requirements from the Metropolitan Water District from their Met Model Ordinance. That's been incorporated in part of the 17 permanent restrictions. And also there are sections in there that we needed to comply with the California Urban Water Conservation Council, the BMP, Best Management Practices. There's BMP 13 to be specific. Those that were incorporated into the 17 permanent restrictions. The permanent restrictions really do two things. One is just to really encourage or require residents to stop wasting water. This is the washing of sidewalks and the things that should normally be done in the community anyways, but it also helps with the urban water runoff, the bay and ocean water quality. By restricting this excessive water use and washing the debris down into our storm drains, it can be used to help clean up our bay and ocean. So those are all part of the permanent restrictions. The second part of the ordinance is 4 levels of increasing reductions that we've established, and we've spent some time. This is what's taken the most time. Each level is adopted by the City Council. So I would bring to you the proposed recommended percentage of decrease or that we would need citywide, and also what level that we would recommend that we would need to be. Level 1 is, for instance, a 0 to 10% cutback. Now, instead of the first version that I brought you said, well, it mandated 10%. Well, we found that maybe we only need 5. It's a complicated calculation, but I could explain that at the time of resolution adoption. But maybe we only need a 2 or 3% reduction citywide. So you would adopt that. And then by doing that, we can look into the customer database usage. Everybody, if they've seen in Newport now, has a new municipal services bill. On the municipal services bill that started about 2 months ago, and the Revenue Division did an excellent job doing this, is a chart and a graph that shows their current usage, last year's usage during this billing cycle, and the 3-year running average for that billing cycle. So now all the customers in Newport that receive water from us can see how much water they're currently using and what target level they should be at. We can put the actual percentage on the municipal services bill, and each time they receive that bill, they can see what target level they should be at. By doing so, should we have an issue, and we still cannot reduce our water supply, we can send customers notices by pulling that data and seeing those customers that are over that target level. So instead of saying 10%, the reason I'm getting at this is the original one when I said just 10%, everybody cuts back 10. If we looked at everybody that hasn't conserved 10%, we'd be sending out thousands of notices, warnings, and even could be violations. And we don't really need 5% or 10%. We may only need 5. So at least by you adopting that level, we wanted to give you the ability to set that level based on our recommendation. As the levels escalate, one of the things that you told us at the study session was, well, how do you enforce this? I think it was an excellent question. We said, well, let's water every 4 days in level 1, and in level 2 we'll go to 3 days, and level 3 we can go to 2 days. Great, but how do you know your neighbor what schedule he's on? There was no real way for us to enforce that. So we've developed a way that we can set up conservation routes, and on the municipal services bill currently, at the top of the municipal services bill, it tells you the route that you live in. That triggers a message in the message box that would say, you can only water Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The advantage to operations is we can say routes 0 to 200 can route Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and routes 201 to 400 can water on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. The reason we do that is because you might see what happened in L.A. when they told everybody they can only water Monday and Wednesday, and then as it gets worse, you say you can only water on Wednesday. The whole city waters, and then the rest of the day they have all this excess pressure. And you may have seen in the news that there's been quite severe breaks in L.A. But I think it puts a stress on the system. So to avoid that, we've developed a system, and it's now it's on the customer service, municipal services bill as we speak. So that was something different than the version I brought you last time. So the enforcement issue was something that we really wanted to address. The other thing was we did add days of the week. I told you last time that in this mild climate, it's not important that we not water during the day because in the desert communities usually it evaporates. But what we thought is that in this level, starting at level 2, we would require residents to restrict from watering from 9 to 5. It's really an enforcement tool that when we see someone watering between 9 and 5, we could issue them the warning. It would give us an opportunity to educate them and say, hey, there is a conservation ordinance in place. And so it's really a tool just for education and also for enforcement. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know it's a long
Councilman Curry.
ordinance.
Thank you, George. It's my understanding that residents who receive service from the Irvine Ranch Water District are already under a tiered pricing scheme, and they also use reclaimed water for landscaping. As I read the ordinance, I just want to confirm that this does not apply to Newport residents who receive their water either from IRWD or from Mesa Consolidated. Is that correct?
That's correct. Actually, what we did is we designed the ordinance as persons and customers. So in the ordinance that says persons would be everyone. Everyone, whether they're served by IRWD or by Mesa Consolidated Water District, are restricted from taking their garden hose and washing down the sidewalk. That is uniform amongst everybody in Newport. Those individuals, when it comes to water usage, are defined in the ordinance as customer. And we define it right at the beginning of the ordinance, what is a customer and what is a person.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Gardner.
A couple of questions. Section 14.16.040, permanent water conservation requirements, number C, City Attorney, safety or sanitary hazards. That to me is a little bit ambiguous, but are you comfortable with that we can?
Well, we reviewed the ordinance and find it's compliant and it's enforceable, but I didn't pick up exactly where you were talking about. So.
It says no person shall use water to wash down hard or paved surfaces, blah, 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 except when necessary to alleviate safety or sanitary hazards. Now, to me, that means like some kind of you spilled lye or
Well, I added
whatever.
the definition of safety and sanitary hazards means the condition that may cause or threaten to cause injury to any person or person.
Okay, good. We did have a definition then. Thank you.
Working through outside counsel, we decided to define that. And really that could be the bacteriological from animal waste to human
Right.
waste, whether it's trash that's causing some bacteriological
we really
issue.
don't want them
But,
washing
yeah.
down the animal waste. We want them to pick it up. But
Right, so we're restricting that.
All right, then on number F, it says by July 1st, 2012, all landscape irrigation systems connected to dedicated landscape meters shall include rain sensors that automatically shut off during rain or include evapotranspiration systems.
Yes.
Are those expensive?
No, actually, I've looked into that because I was concerned about that as well. There's a difference. When it says dedicated meter, really we're talking about the large irrigation customers initially by 2012. And what we found is that most of those, if they don't have the evapotranspiration, those ET controllers, that there's a device, a commercial-grade device for less than $30 that they can install on any irrigation device to make it shut off during a rain. We found that there's also, in exploring it a little further, and we would encourage our residents to do this, is at the Home Depot, for instance, a warehouse where you can purchase things, or a hardware store, you can buy a device for less than $30, maybe $10 or $15 to install even on your home unit. This would save you not only money by not watering during the rain, but it's a very inexpensive device, and so we think it reasonable by 2012 that all devices.
They don't have to redo their whole system necessarily.
Correct.
And then it says no person shall operate a water fountain or other decorative water feature that does not use a recirculating water system. Bird baths?
If a bird bath has a fountain or a pump in it that recirculates, and we did define recirculation as well, where it's recirculating the same water, that's if it's a bird bath that has a garden hose in it and it's just spilling out on the ground, we restrict that.
Right.
I don't think anybody sees that, but all fountains, ponds, ornamental lakes.
The bigger things.
Must use a recirculation pump instead of dump. I don't think anybody has those. But.
And then I had one more question, that we talk about the exception for irrigation of food crops, including fruit trees and vegetable gardens. Is that just for commercial nurseries, or are
No.
my dozen fruit trees, I get to water them?
Yeah, in that, yes, you do.
Excellent.
We decided to do that for the people that have the home garden in the back. We don't see a lot of that in Newport, but if you did and you had a tomato plant, you could water that. You'll see further in the levels that you are restricted to use a bucket or something later on, but initially you wouldn't apply. So what we don't want to happen is when our code enforcement folks are walking by and we see somebody watering their tomato plant, that's the only food source they have. We didn't want to restrict that. So.
Any other questions, George? Councilman Henn?
Yes. City Attorney, I noticed a few typos along the way. I'll just rip those out and give them to you. But secondly, on page 11, I know I've asked this question before, and either I can't remember or I didn't get an answer. I don't recollect. But there is no exemption for construction sites in this, where construction is permitted and they're required to water the site. Seems to me that, we need to provide for conflicting governmental requirements there and either provide relief or an exemption.
Well, your point's well taken. We actually do require the use of water for the purposes of dust control on construction sites. I don't know what the thinking was with respect to not including that in.
Do we make a distinction between potable water and...
Well, actually, in the permanent restrictions, there's section P, which is construction site requirements.
Yeah.
We do address that. And one, we're trying to encourage contractors to use recycled water if it is available, although there may be some issues and we're not sure where they would get that source. But we do have some exceptions. We just say that they must have a shutoff nozzle. So on the permanent restrictions, we do allow dust control. We say no person shall operate a hose with a construction site not equipped with an automatic shutoff nozzle provided such as available.
Well, we're talking about a hose here. I mean,
fire hose. Fire hose. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
It didn't seem to me that section really covered the issue that I was raising. I think as a matter of course, if we permit a construction site to go forward, we need to provide for some mechanism of exemption here. I think that goes beyond what's in here.
Isn't the water typically used for what you have here, dust control or compaction? I mean, that's what you use the water on the site for.
Right.
They're not saying you can't use, they're saying you can't use potable water if there's a non-potable water available. Didn't say you can't, but if it's not available, it doesn't say you can't use potable water. And that P?
Well, yeah.
Sub 1?
You can use the water. I think what we're asking them, one is to use recycled if it's available. In section 1, it's just if there is recycled water available, but if there is not, they can use water. And if they are going to use water, whether it's, for a fire hose or a garden hose or whatever they should use, it must have a shutoff nozzle so they don't leave the water running. But we do allow water usage for, perhaps we should clean that up.
Well,
that's not clear.
I'd just like the city attorney to have another look at that language in light of what we actually write in our permits for these construction sites, just to make sure that there's no inherent conflict here. And then next, there on page 13 where it discusses appeals, actually, it doesn't discuss an appeal. It says the decision of I'm in paragraph F here on page 13. The last sentence, the decision of the utilities director shall be final. I think we need to provide for some further appeal to that because, it's at least conceivable that you might get stuck on a particular point of view. And while I do have a lot of faith in you and your judgment, it just seems like there needs to be one further outlet for unusual circumstances. I'd recommend it to be the city manager or his designee.
Okay.
You know, like parking tickets and lots of stuff where people have an appeal right, just to have one further set of review before a decision is rendered final. And the city manager could appoint a hearing officer, for example, or some other administrative person to handle it if the volume gets too big.
I did have a point of clarification on that, if it would help.
Yes.
The relief from compliance is that those permanent restrictions and level restrictions that you adopt by resolution, people will have the ability to write the utilities director a letter and say, my grandma and her 5 kids just moved in and I need more water. And so I would have the ability to say, yes, I understand that, or no, you can't. If it's a municipal code violation, then it would be bumped to the city attorney's office, where an appeal, which would be an appeal of a violation, would be handled through the city attorney's office. I think what we're saying here is, and maybe it's not worded correctly here, but the relief from compliance from the ordinance would be that they would write us a letter first. We would be able to look at it and say, no, that doesn't really apply. You need to withhold, but we're happy to.
I appreciate your explanation.
Okay.
That's still not entirely clear to me from this, and it seems a little onerous that you'd have to go through the city attorney's office anytime you wanted to raise a simple issue of appeal. And so I just recommend that you have one more look at that. And then just one last question. Were there any permanent restrictions that you considered putting in here and decided not to? Can you give me an example or two?
Yeah. I actually didn't bring the optional permanent restrictions. I'm sorry, I did not this evening. But there was several permanent restrictions in the Met Model Ordinance and in the California. If it wasn't in our existing ordinance or required by the BMP 13 or by the Met Model Ordinance, we didn't add any other ones. Okay. There were other optional ones provided, which I can get you a list from the Metropolitan Water District.
I'd just like to have it. It's
sure.
Not important to tonight's proceedings, but if you could just shoot me that list, I'd appreciate it. And that's all I had.
Let's bring those back for second reading. You can attach it to the staff report.
Okay, I've got one, kind of a random question, I guess. It's on definition of potable water. Means water that's suitable for drinking and excludes recycled water from any source. What about boats with water makers on them?
I'm sorry, with what?
Boats with water makers on them. Are there restrictions on how people use that water? That's a potable water. It's drinkable.
No, I think really that the ordinance pertains to customers and persons. Customers would be those individuals we serve, so the boat making water wouldn't be a customer that I serve. However, a person, I suppose you could not wash a concrete sidewalk down with the water that you made from the boat. So
well, it's kind of an obscure question, but just kind of
no, it's a good question.
Well, where does the water originate from, Matt?
The bay.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
You're increasing the salt content of the ocean?
I think that's what happens. Some of it's probably made out in the ocean, not in the bay. Okay, any other questions for George? Okay, thank you, George.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone from the audience want to speak on this issue?
Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is Philip Betancourt, 10 Sugar Pine Road. I wanted to raise the same questions regarding the Newport Coast customers who are served by IRWD, and I must say I dropped council members Gardner and Curry an email note this afternoon with a copy to George, but I think it got kicked back, I noticed, on my BlackBerry, so I apologize. But I think that the use, it's not entirely accurate to say that the ordinance always draws a bright line between customers and persons. For instance, the hard surface washing restriction applies to all persons in the city, regulating the water use of customers that the city does not provide water to.
Phil, that was looked at as a water quality issue, not,
Okay. But But the water quality issue, I mean, let's take tennis courts, for instance. On a hard surface wash, we have 3 tennis courts and 2 basketball courts that we water with high-pressure wash, which goes into areas which are otherwise irrigated, and that appears to be forbidden under the ordinance. So it's regulating, it's an ordinance that's regulating the use of water that's provided by IRWD and meets their requirements. Secondly, if you look at level 2, hope that we would never get there, if you look at level 2 and level 3 requirements, they deal with irrigation practices of persons. Those are all persons. And again, IRWD has their own sets of standards, but this ordinance would regulate the water use of customers where the city's not providing the water service that's already regulated. I think it's a fair question on the jurisdictional reach of the city's utility, even though it's it may be certainly well intentioned. I think either IRWD provides water service to the Newport Coast or the city of Newport Beach does, and I think you've already crossed that bridge. Those are just some clarifications that I would think need to be made, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, I'm Steve Himmel, and is there going to be another opportunity sometime later to comment, or is this the best time?
It's the best time.
Okay. I read the ordinance for the first time this afternoon, and some of the things I saw in it pertaining to irrigation bothered me in that it seems that it might actually increase water usage instead of decrease water usage under certain conditions. The city has encouraged the installation of smart controllers for irrigation timers, and some of these regulations negate some of the properties of these devices. Some of the timers calculate the number of days water is needed, which days water should be used, and how much time they should be watered. And these timers would have to be reset to a less automated mode, which may use more water if some of these regulations are needed, because the controller may say water 3 days a week, and it may pick Friday, Monday, and Thursday, whereas you say I have to water on Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it just seems to me that maybe something can be done in the regulations to handle the smart controller situation. Next question is the 10-minute maximum daily watering for sprinklers. In some instances, 10 minutes may not be enough time for water to penetrate sufficiently into the root zone of the plants and result in shallow-rooted vegetation, which requires more frequent watering. I imagine the 10-minute limitation is due to runoff. So if something could be done to say that you won't allow runoff, but you can water longer, that might help in conserving water. Other items, some households already do very little or no watering of outside, and thus they consume much less water than similar households that do typical outside watering. And these households would therefore find it more difficult to reduce consumption than one that waters outside. And I really don't know what can be done about that to address things in a fair manner for everybody. I'd also like to agree with Councilman Henn about the appeal process. I think that there should be further avenues of appeal just in case something comes up. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, I'll close the matter and bring it back to council.
I had a question just that I meant to ask George. Do you know, is there any program to help homeowners with pools purchase covers? Because I know there's a lot of expiration.
No, I don't know of any rebates.
That might be something we might want to suggest to MODOC or somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, I know their funding is limited right now. I know they have a little bit coming out for the AstroTurf, but
that's it.
But
okay.
Yeah, their funds are limited right now.
Okay, Councilman Daigle?
The point on the smart timer is well taken.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about that?
I think, well, it is referenced. It is actually exempt under permanent restrictions. I took it a little bit further and just, if you look at the permanent restrictions, we actually exempt smart timers, or we call them satellite-controlled systems, I think. Under 1416-040, A1 basically tells you that it's exempt. So
okay. So if you have a smart timer,
he's talking about if we were in an extreme drought and we asked folks to reduce their water by a percentage, should we allow the smart controllers to run whenever they want? Yeah, I mean, we can add that.
So if you have a smart controller, then you would be exempt from the Monday, Wednesday, Friday of the geography that you live in.
That's what I understood his comment. Yeah.
Thanks.
Wait. If you have a smart timer, you wouldn't. If we're in the drought, you wouldn't have to go Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
That was the gentleman's comment. Under level 2, 3, and 4, I think what he's saying, there's some difficulty to set the days of the week in the smart controllers, as they only water when the soil needs water. So I understand his comment. I don't know the technical. I'll have to look into that. I understood that you could tell them that to only water on certain days, but I don't know the programming, so I'll have to look at it.
Well, it kind of defeats the purpose. I mean, the purpose is when you water when it's dry. If it's going to rain, you don't need to water.
Right.
If it's Wednesday and raining, you don't need to water.
Well, the actual days of the week was something that we added for more of a code enforcement issue instead of really, because we could say 2 or 3 days a week, but it's really hard to police that.
But to completely exempt the smart timers, I don't think works either, because as you get into the more restrictive levels here, even smart timers you would want to restrict from watering, I would think.
To a number of days of week. I'll have to find out from the individuals that program these controllers if they could, because then code enforcement will become difficult. They could ultimately set it for 5 days a week.
We may purposely set a watering regimen that won't provide enough water that the smart timers want to demand. Right?
Well, I think the smart timer is going to want to try to keep the vegetation alive by watering as much as possible, whereas we're asking people to reduce their water even if the grass turns brown in an extreme. So you're right. I don't know how to...
I think maybe the converse argument that he was trying to elicit was that, let's say you have 2 settings, and I'm no expert on this either, that water when it needs it and water Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Right.
Well, you might set it to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and only needs it 2 days a week, and now you're watering 3 days a week, so maybe you're increasing your water usage as opposed to decreasing. Was that the gist of your argument? Yeah, that's what I thought. So, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get an ordinance that's going to cover every situation, every eventuality. But, maybe you could look a little more into that and see what the...
Well, I think that was the intent with the relief from compliance, that we knew that there was going to be... I've already received phone calls when this came out. There was a lady that called and said, I have no outside irrigation. I live by myself. I'm only using 10 gallons a month. How can I cut back? So I understand that.
Stop brushing your teeth. No.
Exactly. No more showers.
10 gallons?
So yeah.
I think he's exaggerating a little
I've been
bit.
getting quite a few calls from people that are concerned. I think they're using examples that are extreme, however. I think that there are going to be circumstances. So I think those are what we were asking for when we asked them, when people send in a relief from compliance to the ordinance, that we, or then now the city manager can say, yes, I agree with you, or no, you have to comply with this. Should they continue to move beyond that, then it would be a municipal code violation, and that would involve the next step of appeal.
So I just have a question of the city attorney. I mean, given the fact that we've discussed some potential changes to the ordinance, does this need to come back again for a first reading, or do you think you can take a stab at these changes? And, no. Okay.
This is not stabbable.
In light of that, George, what I'd like you to do then is also to meet with some of the homeowner representatives from the Newport Coast and make sure that we've worked out some of these inconsistencies between IRWD and the Mesa Consolidated Districts. You know, you could have a situation where they ban persons from watering on even days and we're banning them from watering on odd days and they can't water at all or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I also made an attempt to contact IRWD and both Mesa and did not get a response. We took it, one of the issues that we thought we had is there was areas in Newport along, say, 15th Street, where the person on our side, the city of Newport Beach resident, was restricted from washing the sidewalk. There is no restriction in the Mesa Consolidated or an IRWD district that does not allow you to wash the sidewalk. And so we saw that this is an issue. I realize that it's their consumption. However, we thought in all fairness, watching the person across the street washing the sidewalk, and it was allowed because they were served by somebody else, did cause a bay and an urban water runoff issue, so we thought well, that's why we would use the persons. But you're right, it was very difficult to define persons and customers, but we wanted to be fair to the community.
Well, I think that we've built some flexibility into it. I was thinking of Phil's example of if they've got tennis courts, first of all, they're going into the landscape where they would have to water, and they're saving, well, then they could call, and that would be where you could give an exception. To go back to the speaker, though, also he was concerned about the equity between those who may have a lot of landscape and those who don't. And when we get into tiered water rates, that's something that we will be addressing. Is that not correct?
Yeah, and that's true. And as I stated earlier, in the existing municipal services statement now, we're using data, we can go all the way back to 2006 when there was water available, but we're showing the 3-year running average for that same billing period. So that what the water that you used in July, we're showing that on the chart, what usage you normally used for the last 3 years, plus the current year, plus last year. So they can really get a feeling of how much water they normally use. And so when we ask for a reduction, we're going to use that as a baseline to say we would like 10% from that. So it's not just from your last month, it's going to be from what your normal usage is for that period.
In Phil's situation, are they using reclaimed water? Okay, are we restricting the washing down of sidewalks and tennis courts when reclaimed water is being used?
It's still a water quality issue.
There's an MPDS section in the municipal code that I don't cover, but is restricting water. If you use recycled water to wash off the sidewalks, it's covered in the MPDS discharge permit, or a discharge requirement, but not in line.
Actually, just to put a finer point on that, the NPDS section does allow the city, if the city finds that you're hosing down your sidewalk or your driveway brings a pollutant into the stormwater system, we can issue fines based on that, regardless of your water supply source. It's kind of duplicative of the water conservation ordinance.
Councilman Henn?
Well, George, you've done a great job, and these comments, I think, are chipping around the edges from what is otherwise a really excellent effort on your part, and so hopefully we'll be able to get this worked out.
Well, thank you. It's very difficult to iron out the edges, but we'll get it done.
I'd like to move the recommended actions.
Okay.
I'm recommending that we introduce the ordinance, and we set a public hearing for Tuesday, October 13th.
I thought the city attorney wanted to take another stab at making a few changes.
Yeah, he's going to come back with another task for reading.
How about, I move that we continue this item for further revision. We'll bring it back at our next council meeting.
Okay. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, our next item is appointment to the Building and Fire Board of Appeals.
Yeah, I'd like to bring up something. I don't know if we can really do anything about it tonight, but when we were reviewing the nominations, we had 2, and found that one of the current members of the board isn't a Newport Beach resident. His business isn't in Newport Beach. And we only have 1 opening. But I don't know whether there's a policy about committee and members being either working or living in the city, but since we have two residents who do want to serve on this committee, I'm wondering if we might not want to ask the man who doesn't live in the city, or ask him or suggest that he has done a wonderful job and thank him for his service, but that he should step down so that a resident can serve on a committee that is exclusively concerned with issues within Newport Beach. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Not all of our committees require residency.
Well, I said I don't know if they do, but it
like
seems
we
to
just
me.
formed the Visitors Bureau Committee, right? The
Special Events Advisory Committee, yeah.
Right, and there's non-residents on that committee in there.
The Economic Development Committee's charter says that people who live or either own a business or work in Newport Beach, because a lot of the positions on that committee might not necessarily have a resident.
Right, but the fellow that was listed does not live here, his business isn't here. So I would imagine he's been on the committee since 1976 or something, so he's obviously probably lived here at one time. But it just struck me that if we have someone with no resident or business, and we have two people who do live here, that we might want to make a change in that.
Well, one of the things that struck me that I should have realized, but I didn't, that there's no term of office to this committee. It's basically ongoing. What is the, I mean, there must have been a purpose.
Because it's really hard to find people that.
They don't meet regularly. They meet as needed when someone files an appeal, so they could go for 2 years without having a meeting. And so if you had a 2-year term or something, you might have somebody who has absolutely no experience. So I'm guessing that that's the reason for the lack of terms for this one.
Well, this is a committee which needs to have a technical expertise in both the building and construction codes, and they are professionals that have those capabilities, and it's not a situation where you have really an ongoing dissertation between committee members, and you need to meet more than just when you have an appeal.
Well, there was so few prospects, we had to recruit them from other cities, import them.
Well, no, I agree with Nancy that I think that all of our committees, assuming that we can get the expertise needed within the community, should be within the community. And maybe that what we need to do is have the staff bring back some sort of comment related not just to this committee, but committees in general, as to a residency.
Well, there are some committees, though, that there's a real purpose. Sharon mentioned the Economic Development Committee, because we're looking for business people that...
Well, they have a business in Newport.
Yes.
And so that I think each committee has to be looked at separately. I'm not so sure that this particular one has a whole lot of community issues involved with it. It's mainly the technical issues. So of all the committees that probably don't need to have a residency, this is probably the only one that I can think of. But I still think that we should fill it with residents as
Mr. Webb, I think I found it. It's Municipal Code 1502120. Building a Board of Appeals shall consist of 7 members who are qualified by experience and training to pass upon matters pertaining to building construction and building service equipment, 2 of whom shall be physically disabled and who are not employees of the City of Newport Beach. The building official shall be an ex officio board member and shall act as secretary, but shall have no vote. The Board of Appeals shall be appointed by the City Council and shall hold office at its pleasure. Board shall adopt rules of procedure for conducting its business, render all decisions in writing, and may recommend to the City Council such new legislation is consistent therewith. No residency requirement.
What does serving at the council's pleasure in a practical sense mean?
It means that when we say thank you,
Shall hold office at its pleasure.
yeah, that if we could make the determination that, thank you, you served, and we wish to replace you. Isn't that what it means?
do we need to have a separate item on the agenda to make that recommendation, or so do we need to call it back? What I guess I'm asking is, do we need to call it back if we want to make a recommendation that?
Yeah, I try to be flexible, and so long as we meet the intent of the Brown Act description. This is an appointment issue. This is not a review of appointments.
Right.
And quite frankly, for courtesy purposes, perhaps we should talk to the member and before we bring it back to the council, before you take any action.
Okay.
Who may also be a disabled person.
No, he's not.
He's not.
Oh, that was the one thing that struck me, was he's a mechanical engineer, and one of the candidates was a mechanical engineer, so it would be an equal thing.
Well, I think
Yeah,
the
this
city-
was
I
no
think the city
criticism
attorney's
of the
comment is,
individual. It was just thinking that maybe residents should have first crack at committees.
I think the city attorney's comment is a good one. We should give the courtesy of talking to the person involved before we do anything. Okay, all right. Okay, so is there a motion to continue this?
No.
We can make
No,
the
it's-
appointment.
we can
We've
vote.
got to make the appointment first, and then we'll bring back the other issue later on.
I'll do one appointment and then bring the other one back. Okay.
And
Okay.
we interviewed only one candidate. One of the candidates was unable to interview, so, yeah.
Was it due to medical reasons?
Councilmember Henn voted for William Dildine. Councilmember Rosansky voted for Stephen Sandlin. Councilmember Webb voted for Stephen Sandlin. Councilmember Gardner voted for Stephen Sandlin. Councilmember Daigle voted for Stephen Sandlin. Mayor Pro Tem Curry voted for Stephen Sandlin, and Mayor Selich voted for Stephen Sandlin. So Stephen Sandlin is the newest member of the Building and Fire Board of Appeals.
Okay. Then I will talk to the gentleman and we'll reschedule for the appointment. Okay. Okay, next item is the Task Force on Cycling Safety. It would be my intent to appoint Councilmember Gardner and Webb to this committee. Councilmember Gardner because she was her idea, and Councilman Webb because of his longstanding experience in cycling trails in the city. However, I did suggest that.
Wait, he's walking, Don, not cycling, Don.
No, but he did our bicycle trail.
What about Leslie? She's the cyclist of the
But,
lot here.
well, let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. I encouraged Councilmember Gardner to consult with Councilwoman Daigle and our city manager, her two avid cyclists, and get as much input into this as we can.
The assistant city manager is an avid cyclist as well, too.
Who? We got, maybe we ought
I
to.
thought you were referring to yourself in past tense, Dave.
Yeah, do you guys want to
The city
do the
manager and
task
assistant
force?
city manager.
So I would entertain, and Councilwoman Gardner is chairman, so I'd entertain a motion to that effect.
Second.
One thing about the membership, though, there's a lot of the cyclists live in Corona Del Mar, and if there would be some flexibility in terms of the citizen appointments, if you could, if there'd potentially be one from Corona Del Mar, and then maybe one that happened to live in Corona Del Mar but owned a bike shop in West Newport or some other part of the city, if your business could also meet the residency, another residency, but the location aspect.
I would also imagine that this task force, like the Green Building Task Force, will attract a lot of people coming to the meetings who may not be on the committee formally, but whose input will be welcomed. We've had, I think we have 7 members on the Green Building Task Force, and we've had as many as 14 people at the meetings because they're interested.
Okay, so is there a motion?
But is that okay? Would people be okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
He moved it, I seconded it.
Okay. Anyone want to comment on this? Seeing none, please vote.
With Councilmember Henn absent, the motion carries.
So at the next meeting, we'll bring back names for the committee members?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, next item is item 23. It's the professional services agreement with Sirius Environmental for preparation of a recirculated draft EIR from Marina Park. Who's that, Mr. Kiff or Mr. Badum?
Mr. Badum.
Good delegation, Dave, I like that. You're leading it.
He's there, too.
Right, and we throw Lupo under the bus. Mayor, members of council, what you have before you tonight is a request for an approval of a professional services agreement with Cirrus Environmental for the preparation of the recirculated draft EIR for the Marina Park project. As you're probably aware, the draft EIR was circulated last spring, and upon conclusion of the public review period, we received several comment letters from regulatory agencies and citizen groups and associations and residents that requested further clarification and additional technical analysis. In review of those requests and comments, staff concluded that the clarifications necessary would require the recirculation of the EIR. We also decided that as part of the phasing, or part of the, in addition to the technical studies, that we should look at phasing of the project in order to maybe overcome some scheduling difficulties. We came up with the first phase, which would be to remove the mobile homes. The second phase would be to actually enhance the area that's left after the mobile homes are removed. And, of course, the third phase would be the full project.
Steve, can I ask a question? On the phase one, I'm looking at the colored illustration, which is this sand, or is it dirt, or what is it? It's not grass.
Yeah, it's kind of whatever's there now.
Well, what is there now?
Grass, mobile homes.
It's grass and some concrete pads.
Walkways.
Would the concrete pads remain there? Or would that be part of the removal of the?
I think we'd be removing a lot of the pads and the utility connections, but we wouldn't be putting back any extensive re-landscaping.
Okay.
We might like reseed those areas or something just for temporary.
Who's going to be project managing this moving forward?
Councilmember Daigle, this is something that Assistant City Manager Wood has indicated a willingness to take on the mantle, so I've happily delegated that to her.
Okay, I heard something about somebody from Long Beach potentially helping out, or no? Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I just heard David say something.
Because I just heard there's potential expertise out there. It seems like we're kind of challenged by a lot of these, not marina, but coastal type of issues, and just as that property interfaces with the water and the environmental issues that creates.
Well, we will be dealing with that issue of that the Coastal Commission raised as to whether or not you can create a new marina in an area that has a hydrophytic, sorry, that's the wrong word, but it's close to that, soil, sediment. And the Coastal Commission has indicated a willingness to work with us through their, what they call it's a balancing process where they balance the value of the project with the language within the Coastal Act. So we may have someone who assists us with that, but it will be led by staff.
Councilman Henn.
Yes, I'm very happy that Sharon would be taking over this project, but it would be remiss of me not to point out, and this is born of some frustration from some of the residents in my area. When I look at this timeline, we approved a concept plan on November 13th of 2007, and now it's going to be 2 full years later before we actually get an EIR certified here, and so this is a good example, in my view, of where we really need to drive our consultants rather than the other way around. And so, Sharon, I'm imploring you, as you're anointed in this role, to do your very best to not just manage this project, but to drive it and look for every opportunity you can to drive it to completion. It'll make my life a little easier too, and beyond that, I fully personally support that whole point of view about really trying to drive this thing forward. I did have a couple of questions. Do we have some feeling for cost of phase 1 and then additional cost of phase 2, Steve?
Yes, I think we're still kind of putting together the estimates, but talking with the staff, they're talking about $500,000 to clear the site with the mobile homes, abandon the utilities, and essentially making a condition that's safe for public access. And
would
then
be
phase two,
one.
we don't really have complete numbers yet, but we probably think that's somewhere about in the same neighborhood with a full irrigation system and grass and benches and what have you, walkways.
So we're going to have to be really careful here as we consider, if we get to the point of considering phasing, that we don't spend any more money than we have to. That will be just throwaway money as we get to the completion of the whole project.
Very good point.
And then, following up on my comments just a minute ago, Sharon, the timeline calls now for a approval of the EIR in November, final approval of the EIR in February of 2010 for the certification of it. Do we have any feeling, Sharon or Dave, as to the timeline from there in terms of project completion? Because we got coastal to go and that kind of thing. So,
Councilmember Hannon, the next item on your agenda is the update on the council's 13 priorities. And there is a more it takes the Marina Park project a little further. That's on page 4 of that document. And understand that the big lag time, and I'll certainly defer to Sharon on this one, will be coastal at that point. When we certify, then we get in line basically with coastal, and we have in there what looks like a 9-month timeline with coastal. And at the time the coastal development permit is issued, then arguably we have the last permit in hand that another agency has to issue, and we could move on the removal of the coaches at that point. But that's the calendar that we're proposing there.
I think 9 months is a little optimistic.
Well, but can't we break that down to where we try to do a phase 1 and try to get some sort of de minimis approval rather than 9-month approval just for the first phase, in that we are trying to improve public access significantly to a beach area? And
I think we've heard that loud and clear from you folks, and that will be our goal, yes.
Okay. Any other questions on this item? Okay, anyone from the public want to comment? Okay, seeing no one, bring it back for motion.
move the recommended action.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, next item is review of the staff priorities progress on 6 of the council's 2009 priorities.
Mayor Selich and Council, unless I hear otherwise, what I'd like to do is briefly go through some of the highlights of these 6 priorities in areas where, especially where we are today. So stop me if I'm moving too fast on this one. Starting with the traffic management plan, our next deadline is to bring back to you at your second meeting in November a status as to our CIP projects for this year that you approved in June with the current fiscal year's budget. The next item is the schematic design phase and the EIR for the Newport Beach Civic Center. I mentioned this previously, that your council will have an action item before it on that same meeting, November 24th, 2009, where you could approve the schematic design and adopt the final EIR. And just as a reminder for the public, that EIR is out for public review right now. It's available on our website under the Civic Center project page. I'll move to the next one. This is a multi-section priority about providing more parks and recreation facilities. Starting with Sunset Ridge Park, our goal is to bring the EIR to you for approval in January of 2010. We believe we're on target with that. Moving to Marina Park, as you just discussed and authorized the recirculated EIR. And that public review period will be November 9th through December 23rd of this year. Moving to Coastal Peak Park, everyone knows and celebrated the opening of that park on time, September 1st. It's getting a lot of good use. It's really nice to see. The Oasis, another, I think, real positive project for everyone, currently under construction there at Marguerite, and everyone driving by sees a lot of new improvements each time they go by. Banning Ranch Community Park, that's an ongoing discussion with the developer. Synthetic turf study, that's the next item. Our goal was to bring a presentation to you about study findings and determining whether to proceed. We did that last month.
You know, I just had a quick question on that. I don't think we did decide to make a determination of whether to proceed. I thought we punted that for some period of time. Isn't that right? I mean, we didn't
I thought you did punt, so yeah, maybe there wasn't a determination, and I think that wasn't there a discussion about
We would look at
funding,
budgetary
right?
constraints and address this at the next budget cycle related to whether or not we wanted to try to budget a item for Bonita Creek
Right.
Park, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so I think it's sort of some period of time, maybe months off, before we make a determination of whether to proceed, so.
We'll go ahead and change that in the next time you see it. Finally, the CYC renovation in Corona Del Mar, again, completed and open for public use. Those of you who have seen it, I think it looks pretty sharp. Moving to the next one, Banning Ranch. Welcome Sharon's comment on this. I pulled this together while she was on vacation, so I think I'm close to being accurate, but she can certainly correct me. On the open space, you did direct us last time in August that we continue to be open to new funding opportunities as they present themselves, so that is still outstanding and ongoing. And then on the development itself, the plan is for the EIR to be out for public review between November 2nd and December 16th of 2009. That's still consistent, Sharon?
Well, we hope so. The EIR is moving along. They're done with all the field work on the biological and cultural resources. The model runs for the traffic are all done, and those are being analyzed, and that technical report is being written, as well as the technical reports for biology and cultural, and we're working on getting the traffic information to the air quality and the noise consultants so that they can start their analyses. So it's moving along, I think, as quickly as it can.
And then next one, water quality improvement projects while assessing the need to adopt a tiered rate structure. The Coastal Bay Committee last saw the water quality management plan, and that was able to be revised when we secured the Upper Bay dredging funding and some of the Lower Bay funding. So that's ready to go to council, and I hope to bring that to you next month, the first or second meeting in October as a study session item. The other aspect of this item involves rate changes based on the city's water master plan needs. And as you folks remember, on your last meeting, you authorized rate structure to be prepared for a Prop 218 evaluation. Notices go out to the public tomorrow on that. So we retooled the notice a bit based on Councilmember Gardner and other comments about making sure it's a little bit more reader-friendly to explain what it's going to be. So we're pretty happy with the product when it went out. And then finally, the last priority to update you on is the strategy for the dredging of the Lower Bay. I think news continues to be good here. On your council's agenda item tonight, you approved some additional studies which will hopefully convince the regulatory agencies of the feasibility of taking a lot of the Lower Bay dredging material out to LA3 offshore and minimizing the amount that needs to be disposed of in some other higher cost alternative. So we also expect within the next month that Congress to pass the appropriations bill that includes the initial startup money for the Corps to study the Lower Bay dredging. That's $1.78 million. We don't see any hurdles there so far, but hopefully we'll be able to report back to you that did indeed get passed and signed by the President. That opens a big door to completing the project, sending more funds to the project within the President's budget in the fiscal year 2011. what is federal fiscal year 2011. So we'll keep you posted on that. Unless you have any other questions?
Let's hope that opens a really big door. And I know Colonel Magnus, I know members of the Bay Issues Committee have met with him before, and, you know, he'd like to meet with us again once that 1.78 million goes through, and so we can move some things forward.
Okay, any questions, Dave, on any of these? Okay, anybody from the public want to comment? Okay, seeing none, there's no action required on that. Move on to the next item, which is the Newport Beach Restaurant Association Business Improvement District Mid-Year Benefit and Assessment Levy Increase, Resolution of Intention.
I think Lee will give the staff report, and I appreciate Lee staying later. Arguably, this is an item that maybe could have stayed on the consent calendar, so it could have been my mistake to not pull it forward earlier, but an opportunity to talk about it a little bit.
Lee DeSantis, nice to have a chance to get to it. At the budget proceedings, when the Restaurant Association approached you about an increase in funding assistance, you inquired of them about increasing their levy. And the levy for the Restaurant Association hasn't changed since inception, and so they agreed to that condition, and you'd given them a target of about $25,000 to raise. And so the board met and looked at formulas that would allow them to achieve that, and came forward with the proposed formula that's included in this resolution of intention, which would change the establishments with 10 or fewer employees from paying $50 to paying $95, with establishments with more than 10 employees whose business license is $599 or less, paying 100% of the business license plus $60, and for establishments with more than 10 employees and whose business license is $600 or more to pay 100% of the business license plus $145. This is a change in that there used to be only 2 categories. This expands to having 3 categories. They felt that given the levels of benefit and the need to reach their target, that this was the most fair way to appropriate and distribute the levy in keeping with the law. They meet your target, and in order to begin the process, the resolution of intention needs to be adopted this evening. It, along with an informational sheet, will be mailed to every participant in the Restaurant Association before the end of this week, and that will start the counting that will then eventually come back to you both first for a public meeting and then later for a public hearing for an opportunity for protest. If there are not protests in excess of 51% of the dollar amount raised by the levy, the new levy can be adopted, and the new set of bills would go out January 1st. The levy is an annual levy, so what would be raised initially is half of that amount. It's a 6-year assessment. It'll be prorated according to the resolution, and then come June when they renew, this would be the formula that would be coming for you. There are some equally patient representatives of the Restaurant Association here if you have any specific questions for them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Rosansky?
I don't have any specific questions, and I don't think it's necessary for either of you to probably come up and talk. I am encouraged, though, that you committed to doing this. It wasn't required we couldn't require it, I don't think, as part of the extra funding that we provided to the Restaurant Association, but you did keep your promise and your commitment to us to, kind of match the funds and draw on your members to share in the cost of some of the things that you wanted to do and ask the city to help you with. So thank you for that, and I'll just make a motion that we move forward with this.
Second.
Okay, anyone want to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council.
I guess there's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Please vote.
With Councilmember Webb absent, the motion carries.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Motion for reconsideration. A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Any motions for reconsideration? Okay. I'd like to adjourn the meeting tonight in memory of Gary DeSano. Gary was a longstanding member of our community. He served on our planning commission in, I believe, the late 80s to the mid-90s. He was a resident of the city. He moved out of the city and still participated in our economic development committee. He loved Newport Beach. Gary was just, I knew him well. I considered him a friend. He was just a class act all the way around. As Councilman Webb observed, he always had a positive attitude no matter what he faced in life. He really did love our city. He loved to participate in things Newport Beach. He was passionate about the Tournament of Roses. He spent 37 years working in the Tournament of Roses, and this year he worked his way up to actually being president of the Tournament of Roses this year for 2010. It was a great passion of his, and it's unfortunate that he passed away before he could actually fulfill his dream of overseeing the Tournament of Roses and the football game itself. Gary's survived by his wife Sabrina, 3 children, Christina, Stephanie, and Dominic. He certainly has a long record of community service. He's been a volunteer, the member of the Pasadena Tournament of Roses Association since 1972. As I mentioned, it was a great love of his life. He served on and chaired various committees in the Tournament of Roses. He was elected to the executive committee in 2002. He was involved in many community organizations, as I mentioned, on the Planning Commission, our Environmental Quality Affairs Committee, member of the Economic Development Committee, the Trojan Club Commerce Associates, and a USC Cardinal in Gold. Our condolences go out to Gary's family, and he will be certainly missed here in Newport Beach. Councilman Webb?
I had just wanted to make one small comment. I was a staff advisor to the Planning Commission during the time that Gary served on the Planning Commission, and I just, it's always stuck in my mind how that he was one individual that always had a very positive outlook towards the whole process. And I guess maybe as a staff member, I always felt good because he was very responsive to and appreciated the work that the staff did. But over the years, he our paths continually crossed, and he was always upbeat, even though he had the health problems that he did. And I know that he was, I don't know if he did it out front, but I'm sure he had a lot to do with us getting our Rose Parade float established in our centennial year. And I know that he was always very supportive of the city of Newport Beach, and he will definitely be missed in my mind.
Okay. Okay, with that, we're adjourned.